news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May the 4th. Good morning, I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 10 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 9. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ontario's stay-at-home order is set to expire later this month, but one local epidemiologist feels we should be slightly extending that or maybe temporarily even tightened. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Dr. Rewat is an epidemiologist and associate professor at the University of Ottawa. He explains, based on the best case scenario, intensive care units will still be experiencing extraordinary usage despite the peak being behind us when the stay-at-home order is set to expire. He tells City News the impact this could have and what he feels needs to be done to combat it.
So if we opened up, then that number is at the very least not going to go down. It's not a good place to plateau. So what we want to do is get to February levels when we were at the lowest this year, and that's going to be sometime in June.
Dean suggests instead of just extending the stay-at-home order, a harsher lockdown could be implemented to tighten the screw and shorten the suffering. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 9:01. Some troubling stats out of those international air passengers who have to quarantine on arrival back in our country.
In the past 10 weeks since the mandatory hotel quarantine rule came into effect, more than 5,100 plane passengers arriving in Canada have ended up testing positive for COVID-19. That's an average of more than 500 a week. Here at Pearson Airport, this worker wonders why, if we're all in lockdown, how come foreign flyers are still being allowed in?
Nonsense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me, but who am I, right?
Data from the Public Health Agency of Canada shows more than 3,700 air passengers tested positive for COVID upon arrival, but an additional 1,400 tested positive on the second test 10 days later, after they'd left their quarantine hotel. A third of all the positive tests were for the more contagious variants of concern. At Pearson Airport, I'm Carl Hansky.
City News time, 9:02. Now, doctors and people who got a shot of the AstraZeneca vaccine are criticizing the latest advice from the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. This is NACI. The Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are preferred. That contradicts Health Canada's advice that everyone should take the first vaccine that you're offered. Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca have been linked to extremely rare blood clots. Now, people who got the AstraZeneca shot are posting angry messages on social media saying they were hoodwinked into getting a second-rate vaccine. Others wonder if they should cancel the planned first jab of that one or refuse a second dose of it. Emergency physicians tweeting out that for the good of your health, don't be choosy. City News time, 9:03. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Some showers at times today with a gusty east wind, the high 15 degrees. Tonight, more rain, the low 11. And tomorrow, periods of light rain, a gusty wind out of the west-northwest and the high about 13. For today, the high 15.
And right now in Ottawa, it's 10 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 9. Smiths Falls police are asking for the public to help find a 29-year-old man. Officers say they're looking to arrest Robert Davidson for outstanding criminal offenses. Now, police aren't saying anything more about those offenses. They want to protect the identity of the victims, but they do say there is no concern for public safety. Anyone with information on where Robert Davidson's is asked to contact Smiths Falls Police and their non-emergency line. The concrete stairs at the NCC kiosk that leads to the Rideau Canal Eastern pathway from Colonel Bly Drive at Concord will temporarily close. Parks Canada says the closure is for modification to the stairs as well as the handrail. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
it's the Rob Snow Show on Rutters TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Yeah, I read the news every day. Today, I can't help but think, not everything is going well. Good morning. Rob Snow Show, City News. I mean, it's more than a year of pandemic life, more than a year of lockdowns and curfews and remote work and social isolation and physical distancing, and a year of great uncertainty and turmoil. And it's been more than 4 months, about 4 months and 3 weeks, since we took a turn for the better. Vaccines going into arms. First shots of vaccines started in Ottawa on the 14th of December of last year. That is 141 days ago, and yet 141 days later, the headline for the top story in the newspaper of record for this capital city of this G7 country is we will start dropping like flies. We will start dropping like flies. Who will start dropping like flies? Nurses on the front lines of the pandemic. Our first line of defense against COVID-19 in our hospitals, and some of them haven't even been fully vaccinated yet, 141 days after the first shots went into the first arms. They've only had one dose of a 2-dose vaccine, and they don't know when they're going to get their second dose. And sadder still, they're afraid to even put their names in the newspaper because they're afraid for their jobs. They fear they might be fired for even speaking up about it. My goodness gracious, people, how is this even happening in this city? Don't you want to just shake your fist at it? I thought this country was supposed to be awash in vaccines. Well, if that's the case, why can't we get a second dose into the arms of our nurses? You know, a nurse at the Civic, of course, a nurse at the Civic should be getting a second dose of vaccine before someone like me, let alone a healthy 25-year-old, even gets a first dose. These are our men and women in the trenches, ladies and gentlemen. This story says a nurse in Peel Region died last week, died from COVID-19. Could that have been prevented? Could that have been prevented had we had a more functional vaccine program? Ask yourself that this morning. How is it? How is it? After all of these months, after the Prime Minister and the Health Minister and the posses of hangers-on did the big photo shoot at the Ottawa hospital. Hey, look, take my picture. People are getting vaccinated at the Ottawa hospital today. How is it that all of these months later, our nurses are not fully protected, enjoying the full protection of 2-dose vaccines? See, to me, it's just not right. It's just not right. Before one more group of people is put in the queue for a dose, shouldn't we make sure every single one of our frontline healthcare workers is fully vaccinated? Not this half-vaccinated stuff. Fully vaccinated, 2 doses of a 2-dose vaccine. Can you imagine you're a nurse in a hospital, in an ICU? 800 people, 900 people in an ICU. You've only had 1 dose of vaccine? It's not right that is going on. The Ottawa Sun, meantime, runs with flight risk. And then you turn it to the inside of the paper and it says, coming in hot. More than 5,000 people, Brian Lilly reports this morning, more than 5,000 people tested positive for COVID-19 after arriving in Canada on an airplane. 3,700 of them tested positive when they landed. Another 1,400 or so tested positive later at home. Isn't that great news? Isn't that great news? And David, how many shows did we do? 12? Where I just spent 10 minutes just going down the list. These are the flights that are arriving at Pearson today. Draw your own conclusions. Oh, and by the way, these are the flights landing at the Trudeau Airport in Montreal today. Oh, and by the way, these are the flights that are landing at the Vancouver Airport today. Day after day after. How many times did we do that? A dozen? Probably a dozen. Maybe more than that. And now it seems, well, finally the Trudeau government banned flights from India, banned flights from Pakistan. Now it seems maybe we should think about banning flights from Calgary. I mean, Alberta's every bit as bad as India. Brian Pasfoom reporting for Post Media this morning about the growing number of cases elsewhere in Canada that can be traced back to a plane load of passengers that took off from where? The Calgary airport. Flight risk coming in hot. Headline: Calgary Airport tops the list for domestic COVID cases. Calgary Airport. 55 flights, the story reads, quote, 55 flights departed the Calgary International Airport carrying at least one passenger who tested positive for COVID, with most of the flights destined for either Montreal or Toronto, Alberta. Makes me wonder if someday we'll be doing news stories about the Alberta variant. Alberta, where they have politicians so powerless they can't even stop a small-town rodeo, for crying out loud. More headlines in the papers that make you want to shake your fist. Kenny pledges new restrictions. Council considers upping fines. In Atlantic Canada, in Nova Scotia, they went from having almost no cases to having triple digits in just a few weeks' time. From nobody in the hospital to like 40, 50 people in the hospital. Headline: Premier Rankin scolds the selfish few, says this morning's Cape Breton Post. Meantime, the country's largest newspaper, Toronto Star, and I want to jump all over this topic today. Front page: a dose of confusion, says the Toronto Star this morning. A dose of confusion. For a very long time, you think about it, ladies and gentlemen, what have you been told repeatedly? Okay. As often as stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands, wear your mask. What else have you been told? Take the first dose of vaccine that's available. Don't be fussy. Be lucky you're getting a dose at all. The best vaccine is the one that's available to you. Take the first vaccine available. And for the most part, hey, we've complied, right? Done our part. Haven't been fussy. Haven't vaccine shopped. That's what Canadians have done. Played nice. Didn't shop around. In fact, there's been tremendous demand. Every time the vaccine supply becomes more widely available to more people can't rush to get an appointment fast enough. Tens of thousands of appointments booked online and over the phone in just a few hours just yesterday. So that's why I don't understand what NACI is doing here. NACI. You know, the longer this goes on, I even question the existence, the relevance of this organization. Why does it even exist? Why do we even need this? We have Health Canada. Maybe NACI should just shut up and go away. It seems to exist only to seed confusion and create doubt, to contribute to vaccine hesitancy in this country, which is quite something for the National Advisory Council on Immunization to do. Why are we even listening to what this organization says anymore when we have a regulator called Health Canada? National Advisory Council on Immunization has a very authoritative ring to it. Therein lies the problem, because what are they saying now? Shop around. Okay? Shop around. Don't take the first dose you can get. If it's not Pfizer or Moderna, if it's not an mRNA vaccine, well, then take the AstraZeneca vaccine. Okay. But if those are available, take Pfizer or Moderna instead. Because those are our preferred vaccines. Oh, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice to know? See, I've had one dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine, but I guess I should have waited. The AstraZeneca vaccine supply is running low, and we're about to be flooded with the Pfizer vaccine anyway. Should I have waited? What did I get? The dud? Did I get an inferior vaccine? Will I even be able to get a second dose of AstraZeneca? Should I get a second dose of AstraZeneca? Or should I get a second dose of one of the preferred vaccine? I mean, come on. Who wouldn't prefer the preferred vaccine? Wouldn't that be your preference? Whatever is preferred, from don't be fussy to be fussy. From don't be fussy to what's the rush? If you can wait, you should probably wait. Awesome. Awesome. Communications disaster. Just one of the things, and a pretty big one, that highlights not everything is in tip-top shape right now in Canada. You can comment on that during the talkback hour. Hope you do. Between 10 and 11 o'clock, it's an hour of phone calls, an hour of opinions. 750-1310. It's the hottest hour of talk radio in town. Ahead on our program, Professor Ian Lee from Carleton University. On vaccine advice, we'll be joined by Dr. Gerald Evans from Queen's University, and our special guest at 11:30 this morning, Erin O'Toole, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. All on the Rob Snow Show on the City News.
I wanted to give gifts to my volunteers, so I started making, I knew this is a skill I had, so I made a chocolate that had culture, a cultural based with a teaching, because culture here is not just a little part, it's the large part, it's the fundamental part of our organization. So then we started doing, just little programs, and we sell a few at a fair. And then we started getting contracts. People were starting to enjoy the chocolates, and started getting more and more contracts all across Canada. Then we decided to become a social enterprise, and we were able to create 2 jobs. And Val is one of our chocolatiers, very talented. We were able to help her with employment.
We started just with a little bit in the kitchen, doing a little bit of chocolate together, and next thing, it's just kind of taken off. And it's great, because I love to be creative, and we get to create a lot and make up stuff, and it's just I just love it. It's just great that we get to make money back for Wabano, and it's helping me out, and we're helping just everybody out, Wabano and everything.
We met a very socially conscious business owner being around town, and we decided to partner, because beans and chocolate, coffee and chocolate are sort of created the same way, and there's and they're very one origin bean, so it was a good pairing together. And it's been a fantastic partnership for both of us.
I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Purat, the head of Wabano Fine Chocolates, through a local networking group. And I was completely intrigued by the social enterprise that she was running, and then I looked at what we were doing, trying to support local business and supporting local communities, and it was a perfect match, and it's been fantastic ever since.
We make every batch by hand. We temper it by hand to get to the consistency it needs to be to make a good chocolate. And one of the best, also wonderful things we did, we've connected with Ed, with being around town, and our coffee bars have been an amazing hit. So we're really excited about the connection with our coffee.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcoming Kelli Tauner to our program, Executive Director, Southeast Ottawa Community Health Center. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's nice to hear from you. How do you think the vaccination program is going in our city?
Well, it has its challenges. I'm excited to hear that we have additional doses. I'm excited to hear that we are rolling out kind of priority neighborhoods and providing access to people that are disproportionately affected by COVID, but it's not without its challenges.
Okay. So in the Southeast Ottawa Community Health Center, the provincial vaccine eligibility was lowered to anyone 18 plus in the K1V and K1T postal codes. How has that affected, say, the catchment area of your health center?
Well, we're really excited about that. We've been waiting for this announcement and this opportunity to be able to support more people in our community to access the vaccine. We know we've had some outreach efforts that have indicated, people want to go as a family, or an older couple wants their young 20-something that's working at the grocery store to go before them. So this really just does provide us an opportunity to do a really quick uptake for a lot of people in our area.
Okay. So when you do community outreach, what's your pitch? What's your message to people?
So we are going door to door, just checking in with people, wondering if they understand and know about the options available to them around the vaccine, wondering if they need any support to access testing, or if they're isolating, to access supports to stay at home. We are wanting to ensure that people have the information in a way that's easy for them to understand, and that if they have questions, they know where they can go to get the answers.
And what kind of feedback do you get? What do you hear from people in the community?
We've gotten great feedback in terms of, we're thankful you're here. We're thankful that you're clarifying this for us. Around the vaccine, we've been asking if people wanted to attend, say, a community clinic. And in one of the buildings that we attended, we knocked on 600 doors, and 300 of those doors said that they were ready, willing, and able to get to the vaccine, but they just weren't the right age at the time we were doing that clinic. 150 of those other doors attended the clinic and got their vaccine, and then the other 150 didn't answer the door because they were probably at work. So, we know there are people in our communities that want the vaccine. They're very eager to learn about how they can get it, and they've been very appreciative of the efforts of all of the partners, not just our center, but all of the agencies that are out working with us.
But there was an awareness there.
There is an awareness.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not from lack of knowledge. It's just they're just waiting their turn, kind of.
Correct.
Thing, right? Yeah. Okay. That's good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were excited to hear that. And again, there is some confusion. There are challenges, in understanding who's available, what's the system for booking, how can I do that, if English or French isn't my first language. And so they've been very appreciative of the efforts of all of the agencies coming out to make that process easier for them.
Okay. What contributes, would you say, to a neighborhood being labeled, for lack of a better word, a hotspot or a vulnerable area?
Yeah, I think
what causes that?
Yeah, I think that the definition of hotspot is in large part predicated on the data that says there are higher numbers of COVID cases in that area. I think you will see those kinds of neighborhoods identified in large part because there's high density living. There are a lot of essential workers, people who are working on the front line. You see multi-generational households living in smaller quarters, which contribute to some of the risk there. And I think that those are probably the reasons why we have areas that need more time, need more attention, and need quicker and easier barrier-free access to the vaccine.
I just wonder, the longer this goes on, and we're using these terms like vulnerable or hotspot, whether is there not going to be some kind of lasting stigma to this? Oh, he or she's from a hotspot or a vulnerable neighborhood. I worry about that. Right.
We're certainly concerned about that. This isn't an area of people who have made choices and disregarded public health, and this is the reason why we have concerns there. Mm-hmm. These are individuals who are working in essential services, who are facing challenges and barriers to access, who are doing the hard work to kind of keep our communities going, and at the same time do face higher risk just because of where they live.
Yeah, lower income, more crowded housing, you said, right?
Absolutely.
Multi-generational families under the same roof.
Yeah.
Working in lower paying essential jobs, right? Service industry jobs, probably.
Working on the front lines.
On the front lines.
Yeah, working in long-term care, working in our grocery stores, working to keep our service industries running. These are hardworking people that are doing the best to take care of themselves and their families under very challenging circumstances, who perhaps don't have access to technology or have as easy access to technology. There's lots of reasons.
Right. And language barriers would be a big thing, I would suspect, right?
Yep, for sure. That's a possibility.
Right. How prevalent would you say vaccine hesitancy is, Kelli Tauner?
We are not seeing that in our outreach efforts. I mean, there is, as always, as across the city of Ottawa, regardless of where you live, there are people that have concerns. There are people that require more information. But for the large part, what we're hearing when we go door to door is, when is it my turn and how do I get it?
Okay. Eagerness.
Yes.
Like the rest of us, right? Yes. Like everybody else, right? So.
And as I said, lots of concern for family, lots of concern for others,
right.
Wanting to make sure that before I take it, can my son get it? Before it's my turn, can my mother get it? Or I don't want to go unless my partner's going with me. There's lots of concern for everyone in the community. And so this new announcement around lowering the age to 18 plus is really going to be helpful to try and support these communities to access the vaccine.
Excellent news. Excellent news all around. Thank you, Kelli Tauner.
Thanks so much.
Nice to hear from you, Executive Director, Southeast Ottawa Community Health Center. Professor Ian Lee, right after the news. He's with Carleton University. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May the 4th. Good morning, I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 10. Here's what's making news this hour. A local epidemiologist says the stay-at-home orders we're currently under should really be extended. Dr. Rewat Deonandan says even tightening the measures a little bit more in the province over the short term would prevent some long-term problems, like ICUs and hospitals continuing to be extremely busy even as case counts are on the decline. As Canada expects a steady arrival of 2 million Pfizer vaccines this month and next, the country's top vaccine panel is being accused of sowing confusion and contradiction after recent advice from Health Canada. Canadians were told for weeks, take the first COVID-19 shot you're offered of the 4 approved for use in our country. But the National Advisory Committee on Immunization said yesterday the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are preferred. Now, some Canadians who got the AstraZeneca shot are posting on social media they feel they've been hoodwinked into getting some second-rate vaccine. That's just one reaction to yesterday's statement by NACI on immunization that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines would be preferred. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Saying good morning to Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, the poor professor from the glebe. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you. What have you thought about the government's full-on push with Bill C-10? Now it seems the Liberals are in retreat. What have you thought about this over the course of the last week?
The moment I saw it, it just boggled my brain. As you know, Rob, I've been teaching for about 32 years around the world since 1990, whatever that is. I guess it's 31 years in developing countries around the world, authoritarian countries, China, Cuba, Russia, countries like this. And this is this policy that they deny, but the words are very plain. We're proposing to regulate social media. In plain English, that means individual conversations of you and me and others when we post something. Could be a YouTube video. It could be a blog. It could be anything that's digitally posted. And what they're proposing, it smells, looks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, and it walks like a duck. It's probably a duck, and it certainly looks like the model that the Chinese government uses to regulate the internet in China. And I say that I've been going there for 10 years. I have to use a VPN when I go there because I can't use a VPN that comes back to Carleton, and then through Carleton it goes out to the internet in North America, because I can't even access Google in China without a VPN, a virtual private network. For those who don't know what that means, it's a way of going around the censorship. And so my point being, when I saw this, I thought, what on earth is going through their head? This is not something that you do in a Western democratic country. No. And for those who think I'm over the top, there is, as Michael Geist, the distinguished Canada research professor at the University of Ottawa, said, not one other OECD Western democratic country is proposing this. And so on that ground, it's just barking dog mad. From a pragmatic political point of view, if this is passed into law, I think that this is going to generate blowback from the Americans, because these regulations that they're proposing are falling disproportionately on large American digital giants. And for anyone who thinks that the Americans, now that Biden is the president, are our friend, and they're going to stand, quote, up for us, and they have our back, end quote, they should go and read his comments of only about 5 days ago about Buy American. And he basically blew us off and told us to pound salt. He is going to enforce the Buy American against everybody, including Canada. So, on a sort of a democratic rights and values dimension, this is just absolute foolishness and idiocy. And on a practical point of view, from a practical level, it is, I think, foolish because it's going to, I think, is likely going to generate a blowback from the U.S. administration.
Well, it certainly has generated a blowback from Canadians, first of all.
Absolutely,
right. Yeah,
because this is so, they keep talking about Canadian values. This is so antithetical, so opposed to everything that we believe in. We just don't believe that the government should be regulating what we think or regulating what we write or post. The idea that they can regulate what we're saying on Facebook, so everybody listening understands this isn't something theoretical. Regulating what you post on Facebook or what you upload to YouTube videos or what you post on LinkedIn or what you post on any digital media. That, I believe, includes blogs. I believe that, I'm not saying that they're going to go after private email between you and I, but the moment that digital communication becomes public in any way, like a blog,
right,
like a Facebook post. I mean, Facebook by definition is public, or Google. Then what they're saying is that they reserve the right. And beyond it's antithetical to Canadian values, I just don't know what's going through their head that they would want to. I mean, I look at the photographs of the minister, Mr. Guilbeault. I mean, I shouldn't be making these judgments, maybe, but I do. He looks positively demonic. As in the devil, demon?
Well, I would say devilish. I would say he looks devilish. Okay,
he's
devilish.
Got a demonic look on his face,
well,
he's Rasputin, this wild, crazed man. I'm finally in a position of power to go after all of you. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God, good God. We've got a demon, a demonic.
It is interesting, though. Michael Geist has a column for Maclean's this morning where he makes the point. Why is it that this is being led by the heritage minister when we have an innovation minister? Surely a lot of this stuff, the future of the internet would be more under innovation than heritage, you would think.
If you look at Mr. Guilbeault's background, he came out of the NGO community. And he came out of part of the NGO community that thinks that they don't like the media they get, and because the media has been critical, and they don't agree with the mainstream public opinion. And I have no doubt in my mind, I believe that he has this sense of moral superiority, that his views and his philosophical outlook on the world is right, correct, and if you disagree, you clearly... there's something wrong with you, and we must step in to regulate your thoughts when they disagree. And so I do see it. I don't see it as partisan in the sense that the Liberals are just trying to shut down opposition. I don't believe that. I believe it is genuinely and deeply, philosophically, ideological. They believe that their worldview is not only a superior worldview, it is the correct worldview. And it reminds me of studying and reading about the women's Christian temperance movement in the 20s, it was in the late 1880s and on through. And in fact, I watched Ken Burns' documentary on PBS on prohibition. And you watch the language, he's dug up some amazing quotes and photographs and articles and so forth. And the language, that morally superior, this is the demon rum and the demon people doing this bad behavior.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was a religious fanaticism. Let's be very clear. It was religious fanaticism. And what's happened, paradoxically, with the decline of formal religion as we become a much more secular society in Canada and the States, there's no doubt about that. You can see it in the stats, church decline, membership decline, and it's been studied to death by academics. The irony is that religious fanaticism has migrated to the far left, to the woke community and the progressive community, and I would put Mr. Guilbeault in that group. And they become religious fanatics in the most extreme sense of the word, that if you disagree with their worldview, then they want the tools to be able to shut you down.
Well, in fact, yesterday during the question period in the House, such as it is these days, whenever he was questioned on this, his line of response was, you're an extremist. You're an extremist. You have an extreme opinion. Right?
So an extremist is accusing the mainstream of being extreme. Why? Because you disagree with him.
One of the reasons that this bill is even where it's at right now in the machinations of Parliament is because of the decline of the newspaper industry and the rise of social media and how social media gutted the traditional news industry. Do you think social media, the big social media companies, the Googles, Facebooks, that they should pay for news content?
No, I don't.
You don't even think that, right?
Well, hang on.
Okay.
Of course you should pay for content if you are copying the article. I am. As a professor, we get warnings every term. Do not copy articles because you have to pay copyright dues.
Right.
And you're allowed so-called the fair use doctrine, where you can use a sentence or two. I don't know the precise definition, but you can use a sentence or two as a quote without having to pay. But the moment you go and take the whole article, you're subject to it. The Googles and the Facebooks and these digital media, and I do not consult to them. I don't have an investment in them. In fact, I don't even use my Facebook account. It's just there's a tombstone ad saying, here's my title and my name, and that's it.
Come and mine my data. I'm not even here anymore.
Nothing there. It's just a tombstone. I call it a tombstone ad that just states my name and my position. Right. But where I'm going with this, they provide a link to other stories. Well, my goodness, I send emails all the time to friends saying, here's a link to a story in the New York Times or the Ottawa Citizen or the National Post.
You send me about a dozen of those a week.
I do indeed. Yeah. And so they're doing this and millions of other people are doing. And so what the Facebooks, I think, will do, they've already learned if they protest or disagree, they get attacked. So what they'll do is to stop linking. So what they're going to do is drive down the viewers that the Googles and the Facebooks are sending to these small media, digital media that desperately need eyeballs. They need customers. And so this is a counterproductive measure that is going to hurt these small digital publishers. But back to the larger point about Mr. Guilbeault and the Liberals, I think why they see them, and they've tried to go after the digital giants and say they're bad, and they're the enemy. I actually don't believe them. Let me explain this. I think that they've realized they cannot attack all Canadians. They cannot go after you and say, all of you people out there that think differently from us, that's not acceptable. They can't say that. So what they've done is they've said, the enemy are the digital giants. But the digital giants are merely a medium. They're a medium. They don't have their own opinions about most of the time. They're not writing. Facebook doesn't write op-eds every day and post blogs every day. Neither does Google or any of these digital giants. They're making money over providing a platform to you and I and millions of others that are willing to pay a fee because there's a membership fee or a user fee or whatever. Or they're getting revenues from the advertising companies that want to all of those eyeballs, your eyeballs, my eyeballs, and millions of others that go there. So my point is, they're going after the digital giants as they pretext, but their real opposition, the people who they really are targeting, is us, all of us. That's why they want to regulate social media. They're not trying to regulate social media to go after Google. Let's be very clear. They're not going regulating social media to go after or Apple computer or Facebook. They want to regulate social media to get at the people who are posting there, which is millions and millions of us, we the people. So they have, in essence, through coded language, are declaring war against all of us because that's to the extent that we disagree, any of us disagree with their overall worldview or the things that we may disagree with them on this policy, for example, or we may disagree with them on carbon tax, or we may disagree with them on whatever, a social policy, a daycare. And I do think that this is their attempt. I think it's going to fail, and I don't just mean politically. It's going to fail because I'm going to quote Pierre Trudeau 40-odd years ago, and he made this argument, and he got hugely criticized at the time. But there was an element of truth, a kernel of truth in what he said. He said, look, these totalitarian systems like China and Russia, they're not really completely totalitarian, because he said the people go along with the rules because there aren't enough policemen in these countries. You would need one policeman for every citizen if you truly, truly, truly were in control of the country. So his argument was, well, because they don't have that many police, the most people go along with the rules, and so there's sort of a crude and rough democracy there. That was his argument. As you can imagine, a lot of people attacked him for saying that. But there was a sort of a kernel of truth there, that you cannot, no country in the world can physically coerce every last citizen all the time. You just don't have enough forces. You don't have enough secret police. You don't have enough, army, and that's why the Soviet Union collapsed in part. They just couldn't spy on everybody and coerce everybody all the time, and so that's why I think this will fail. I mean, there's no system that can monitor all the conversations and all the blogs and all the posts and all of the views put forward by millions and millions of us every day. They just don't have the people or the technology that can do that. They think they can.
Well, I don't know. They managed to do it in China. I mean, you can't read about Uyghur mistreatment in China. You can't read about Free Tibet in China. All of these things.
They have not just internet censorship. Right? They also do back it up with a very strong force, and they do horrible things to you if you disobey them. Of course, we don't do that.
Okay, we'll be right back. I want to talk about real estate. I want to talk about Canada Post. There's a lot of material to get into this week with Professor Ian Lee from Carleton University, Sprott School of Business, here on City News.
To opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me. People don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, where I had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me, I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew that we have to wait, and we knew that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what the grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
Inform.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
We're back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. He's with us every Tuesday morning, and we greatly appreciate the fact that he does take the time for us. So I have to ask you, because there's lots of media coverage this week, Professor, about the housing crunch, the housing boom, the housing bubble, and whether younger generations are going to be shut out of ever being able to buy a house, and if so, that they're never going to be able to build up a nest egg, build up some home equity. And what would the consequences be of something like that? I know you have an opinion on that don't cry for the millennial generation because they're about to inherit all of this wealth from the baby boomers. Are you still sticking with that?
Well, hang on. That's not quite what I've said, but it's halfway there. What I've said is 70% of Canadians, 68, 70% roughly, I've seen different figures, but it's very close, of Canadians own their own home. And we know that and then you go to another data set, which is the national household wealth, personal wealth. And I think it's about 65% of our wealth is in real estate. So most of our wealth, for most of us, is real estate. And almost 70% of us own a home. And then you go to a third piece of data, and that's the BMO pension fund, or pension group, I should say. And they've done surveys repeatedly of older people, of boomers, basically 60 or 65 and up, and saying, what are you planning on doing with your money, big picture? And some staggering number, like 95% of older people with money have said they're leaving their money, most of their money, to their children. So those millennials that are fortunate enough to have a parent who, A, owns real estate with a lot of equity, and B, is planning to give it to them, will be okay. That is not all millennials. But some millennials, 30% of millennials have parents that don't have any real estate, and so therefore their net worth is going to be very small. And there'll be some millennials that say, I don't care to give my wealth to my children. Warren Buffett has said so. He's giving 99.999% of his gazillion billions away to philanthropic. He said, I'm only going to give, I can't remember what it was, $5 million each to his children. Now, of course, that's a lot more than you and I, but when you consider he's worth 70 or 80 billion, and he said they're not going to get it. So there are people out there. So, but in this op-ed that was in the National Post the other day by obviously a millennial, I thought she raised a very much more important issue, that it wasn't just real estate. She was attacking governments for supporting policies that enrich boomers, older generation, at the expense of millennials. And she used the example of that gratuitous, and she thought, and I agree, unnecessary arbitrary increase in the old age pension was given to everybody, not just low-income people. And she gave that as an example, and it's going to add billions and billions and billions to the bill. And I've used the example of the city councilors in Ottawa and Toronto and Vancouver that have deliberately socially engineered a shortage of housing by putting restrictions on growth of new suburbs, thereby hurting our young people and immigrants, to enrich the people in the urban core because they have profited the most. Follow the money, everybody. Sure. Who's benefited the most from the run-up in real estate? The people in the Glebe, the people in Westboro and New Edinburgh and Old Ottawa South. In other words, the urban core. These are older. If you look at the stats, these are older people that live there, and they're the wealthiest or highest income people living in the wealthiest postal codes. So what this woman was arguing was really intergenerational inequity and a lack of social justice because of these policies that disproportionately benefit older, wealthier people living the most privileged lives in Canada.
Okay, let's talk about Canada Post, because you've done a lot of research. I mean, a lot of your academic life you've been studying Canada Post, and every now and then it comes up, well, maybe Canada Post should get into the banking business, what's known as postal banking, very kind of bare bones, banking, savings, checking accounts, holding deposits, safety deposit boxes, these sorts of things. Once again, it's coming up. Canada Post is losing money. It has a lot of real estate. It has a vast real estate portfolio, and there's not a lot happening with the real estate. They don't make a lot of money from the real estate. It's a parcel delivery company now, basically, Canada Post. Okay. What do you think of the idea of the Canada Post Banking Corporation or something like that?
It's delusional.
It's delusional.
It's delusional. And so everybody understands why I just said that. I wrote what I still consider and believe, and I think others would if they read it, was the definitive analysis of Canada Post. It was 850 pages. It was so big, it had to be published in part 1, volume 1, volume 2, my PhD thesis, because they couldn't publish a thesis that thick.
Yeah, your professors were like, get to the point, Ian. I mean...
What I was doing was showing empirically, so there's tons. If you like empirical data, that's the place to go. Yeah. And what I showed very quickly in a nutshell was that really starting with the 1850s, the invention of telegraph, that successive waves of technological innovation have reduced I didn't say eliminate, have reduced the importance of the post office. Whereas if you go back pre-telegraph, as I put it, the post office was the telegraph, the telephone, the television, and the internet all rolled into one. It was the only way to communicate over distance other than face-to-face. If you wanted to communicate information in Ottawa to Toronto, you did it through the post because that's how they shipped the newspapers. That's how you wrote letters and how you communicated them. And so subsequent technologies have eroded the post, and this accelerated in the 80s with the invention when I was in head office of Canada Post in corporate finance and banking for a period of 2 years between my master's and PhD, and I saw the numbers coming in by post office and how fax was absolutely taking revenues away from the post office. It was very visible and very empirical and very factual.
The fax machine was.
Yeah, the fax machine was the first electronic technological substitute. I say electronic, I mean a telegraph and phone are electronic in a sense. But what I meant was you could send the image over the message, the image over the wire, and then of course along came the internet in 1995, and I mean by that the mosaic and the browser that facilitated not only e-commerce, but hey, guess what? Banking, digital banking. So this proposal, and by the way, the Post Office Savings Bank was wound down in 1968 by, oh my goodness, Pierre Trudeau's Postmaster General. How do you like that? Seriously, my research showed that. It's right there. Where I'm going with this is this proposal has been percolating for the last 30, 40 years, driven by unions and by those people who don't want to see their post offices disappear because they know their business is going down, down, down. And so they've come up with this cockamamie idea, and I'll explain why it's cockamamie.
Very quickly,
that they're going to be saved by essentially financial services, postal banking. I want to say to the man responsible for Canada Post from the East Coast. He's the East Coast MP, the long-time Liberal MP friend of Trudeau. That maybe they should go look at their own research and their own information on digital banking and digital transformation. We are not going to physical banks anymore. The banks want to close more and more branches. Why? Because more and more people do their banking online. Sure. If you go to Payments Canada, which is the nonprofit Crown Corp, created by the Liberals, by the way, many years ago to run the clearing system, almost all of our payments, a huge number of our payments are now done electronically. Credit card, debit card, ABM.
Of course. So they're delusional. Like you said, they're delusional. Look, we got to wrap it up. If I let you go any longer, we'll be here for another hour. Look, the fact is, the charter banks can't close his branches fast enough.
Exactly.
Right. And this also says the post office thinks it can somehow deliver rural internet. Well, come on. Who's going to deliver rural internet? Elon Musk or Canada Post? Who's going to deliver it faster?
And there's only 10% of the rural population in the rural to boot.
Exactly. All right. We got to go. We'll talk about it next week. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. It was 800 pages. We could probably could do another hour on it with Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. This is City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May the 4th. Good morning, I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. It's 10 degrees in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The city says its Overbrook-only vaccine clinic was fully booked shortly after it opened today. 500 vaccines for residents of that area of Ottawa made available today at the Overbrook Community Centre. No appointment, just show up with proof you live in the area, you get a shot. Well, shortly after 9, all 500 shots available today were spoken for. Anyone in the 18 years old and over category who want to try again, there's another clinic on Thursday, again at the Overbrook Community Centre. Again, 500 shots available. With the province-wide stay-at-home order slated to expire later this month, one epidemiologist in the city is suggesting the order be adapted to address the current COVID status. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
University of Ottawa Associate Professor and Epidemiologist Dr. Rewat Zianandan feels that if restrictions are reduced by the end of May, at the very least, cases will not go down. He tells City News why he feels COVID-19 rates need to return to what they were in February before the stay-at-home order is lifted.
Best case scenario shows that at the end of May, even though the peak will be behind us, our ICUs will still be experiencing extraordinary usage. Around 500 people in the province will be ICU beds, which doesn't sound like a large number. It's a very large number.
Instead of extending the stay-at-home order until sometime in June, Zianandan is also suggesting a harder lockdown to tighten the screws and limit the suffering. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 10:04. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Some showers at times today with a gusty east wind, the high 15 degrees. Tonight, more rain, the low 11. And tomorrow, periods of light rain, a gusty wind out of the west-northwest and the high about 13. For today, the high 15.
And right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. It's 10 degrees in Smiths Falls. Members of ACORN, that group, will be picketing some 30 MP offices today over real estate investment trusts. REITs. The group says the federal government has failed to address the issue, which it says has a disastrous effect on rental housing right across Canada. This morning at 11 o'clock, pickets will be set up at various offices, including Ottawa Centre MP Catherine McKenna at 11 o'clock. Now, the group is calling on the federal government to end subsidies to corporate landlords and implement a system where REITs would be taxed based on affordable housing that they produce. The South Nation Conservation is helping plant over 230,000 trees and shrubs throughout its watershed this spring. This will be the most trees planted by the SNC in a single year, previous record set in 1993. SNC says the tree planting service has been deemed essential and will continue to go ahead, most of the trees being planted on private property. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Yep. Every single phone line available right now, and I'd love to hear from you. I want to talk about NACI, the guidance on AstraZeneca and other vaccines that came down yesterday, and we have lots of audio that we're going to play for you this morning. Just the competing advice from the competing experts. It's hard to know who you are supposed to believe sometimes, but here's what I want to ask you. Given what NACI said yesterday, the officials from NACI, National Advisory Committee on Immunization, doesn't that sound official? Will you vaccine shop? Shop around. Have you vaccine shopped? You get a call back from a pharmacy. Yeah, we're doing shots, AstraZeneca. No thanks. Pass. I think I'll go to the city-run clinic. I get Pfizer through the city-run clinic. Are you one of those? I'm not here to judge. I'm not judging. Okay, especially given this advice from NACI. Are you thinking about vaccine shopping now, given the advice that was handed down yesterday? That the AstraZeneca vaccine is not the preferred vaccine of NACI. It said yesterday, totally contradicting what politicians have been saying, NACI said yesterday, you shouldn't necessarily take the first dose that you can get of a vaccine. NACI's preference is the mRNA vaccines. Those are the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. They are the mRNA vaccines as opposed to the AstraZeneca vaccine, the J&J vaccine, made a different way. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization says if you can wait for a shot, imagine this is where we are on the 4th of May. If you can wait for a shot of those vaccines, that's what you should do. Because of the risk, the very rare risk of blood clots. So given that's the advice from this very official sounding organization, NACI, what will you do now? What will you do now? Will you vaccine shop? Have you already vaccine shopped? Said, I'm not crazy about getting the AstraZeneca vaccine. I'm going to wait for Pfizer. I'm going to wait for Moderna. Okay? Are you thinking about vaccine shopping? If you've already had, let me ask you this. I've had 1 dose of AstraZeneca. David hasn't had a single dose yet. Okay? David is a healthy 23-year-old. He's way at the back of the list. Did you even try to book an appointment yesterday? Or are you allowed? You don't live in one of the hotspot postal codes? You can't even, you don't even qualify.
I
yet,
can't.
right?
I can't. I couldn't even if I wanted to. No, I can't.
Right. I have no regrets about getting 1 shot of vaccine. Okay, no regrets at all. But if you have already had the AstraZeneca vaccine, do you feel like you received an inferior vaccine? I got the dud vaccine or something like that. Yeah. And would you like a different vaccine for your second shot? I don't even know if you're going to be allowed to do that. If it's going to be advisable. I guess we'll have to wait for NACI to come out and then change its mind and then change its mind again, which is kind of the history of this organization. Let's play some clips. Okay? First of all, let's play the politicians going at it. You have Michelle Rempel is the Conservative Member of Parliament from the Calgary area, Michelle Rempel-Garner. She's the health critic for the Conservatives. And you have the Health Minister, Patty Hajdu, on this NACI news. This is how it played out between those two yesterday.
So what does Health Canada advise? This is a lot different from what we've been hearing. Taking the first vaccine offered or wait if you can for an mRNA vaccine?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first of all, I'd like to thank NACI for their ongoing work in helping provinces and territories determine how to deliver the vaccines that are approved for use in Canada. As a member opposite might realize from listening to witness testimonies at Health Canada or at the HESA Committee, Health Canada is responsible for approving vaccines for use in Canada and have given specific use requirements. NACI then takes the evidence and provides advice on how best to administer it. If any Canadian is questioning whether a vaccine is right for them, the best place to get information is from their healthcare professional.
Okay. Not our healthcare professionals, your healthcare professionals. In other words, I don't know, ask your doctor. Ask your doctor, okay? So we have 2 doctors from 2 different organizations. We have Dr. Shelley Deeks, Vice Chair, National Advisory Committee on Immunization. Okay? National Advisory Committee on Immunization. Let's play clip 3 from her. We preferentially recommend mRNA vaccines.
And what we've said all along is that the mRNA vaccines are the preferred vaccine.
Preferred vaccine.
And yet, given the epidemiology, the viral vector vaccines are very effective vaccines, but there is a safety signal, a safety risk.
Safety signal, safety risk, and then she went on to say individuals need to make a choice.
And so individuals need to have an informed choice to be vaccinated with the first vaccine that's available, or to wait for an mRNA vaccine. They need to be aware that those are the options available to them.
But their preference is the mRNA vaccine. She made that clear yesterday, right? Then you have Health Canada, which is not NACI. Health Canada's the regulator. And Dr. Sapir Sharma, who said, don't talk about good or bad vaccines.
All of these vaccines are good. But I just wanted to caution against the sort of good or bad vaccines. If there's a vaccine and it's been authorized by Health Canada, it means that it's met standards.
Don't talk about good or vaccines. Take whatever is available.
Our advice to Canadians is to get whichever vaccine is available to you. It's that simple.
It's that simple.
The longer you wait to get vaccinated, the longer the time goes by that you are not protected.
She said that March 5th and again on April 14th.
Our best advice to Canadians is always the same, but possibly more urgent now than ever, with cases of COVID-19 increasing across Canada. Get whichever vaccine is available to you. It's that simple. The longer you wait to get vaccinated, the longer you're not protected.
The longer you wait to get vaccinated, the longer you're not protected. But then Dr. Deeks said May 3rd, 2 days ago, people should choose between vaccines.
For an individual to choose to be vaccinated with either AstraZeneca or Janssen, they need to make an informed choice as to whether they would prefer to get vaccinated sooner with a Janssen or AstraZeneca vaccine, or wait to receive the mRNA vaccine.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Deeks. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that. Greg, Smith Falls. Good morning, Greg.
Morning. How are you, Rob?
I'm confused.
Hey.
Confused. Greg, I'm confused.
Well, I'm not confused.
Yeah?
The coward at the cottages dropped the ball. You know, not protecting our nurses. My son had his first shot, and he ended up getting COVID.
Oh, no.
Mind you, he got mild effects.
Yeah.
And he's over it, and he's back to work now.
Okay.
But I think, you know, they should have stopped international flights over a year ago and did this lockdown then.
Right. Yeah.
It's not doing us any good now.
Well, I mean, front page of the paper today, front page of the Ottawa Citizen today, sir, is we will start dropping like flies. Elizabeth Payne reports 14 months into the pandemic with more vaccines on the horizon, brighter days ahead. A group of Ottawa nurses say they are more vulnerable than ever.
Exactly.
To contracting COVID-19 and are terrified. They've asked not to be identified to protect their jobs. They're pleading with officials for a second dose of vaccine.
Yeah.
Saying the high numbers of seriously ill COVID patients in hospitals is putting them at increasing risk. How is it? We've been vaccinating people in Canada, sir, since December of last year.
Mm-hmm.
Since December of last year. How is it that nurses on the front lines in our hospitals have not yet had a second dose of vaccine? How is that even possible, sir?
Ask Trudeau.
Ask Trudeau, yeah. Yeah, well, I'd like to. There are a lot of people I'd like to ask.
And
I would like to, okay, ask Trudeau because of supply constraints, right?
Right.
What goes on in the hospitals is a provincial responsibility as well, sir.
Yeah, I know.
It's Doug Ford's government that runs healthcare in the province of Ontario, right? Last time I checked. Okay.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you
I
like to
agree.
ask him a question or two? Wouldn't you like to ask Christine Elliott a question or two about why nurses don't have a second dose in the province of Ontario at the Ottawa Hospital, for crying out loud?
My son didn't get his till March. He's not scheduled for a second shot until August.
Yeah,
okay. Now Pfizer and Moderna has already said and told the government that second vaccine may not be valid then.
May not be what? May not be what? Sorry?
It could be no good. They're waiting, instead of the 21 days, they're waiting 4 months before they're vaccinating.
Right. Oh, okay. The interval. Yeah. That it might not give the full immunity, you're saying.
Exactly. Like, I haven't got my vaccine. I'm 55.
Right. You haven't even had a first dose, yes. You're saying.
I haven't had my first dose. I live alone.
Yeah.
I only go to do groceries. I'm not like all these young kids that got to socialize and stuff.
Right.
But, you know, I'll take my dog for a walk or whatever, go get my groceries once a week.
Yeah.
But this doesn't, you know, they knew this was
Greg,
coming.
let me ask you, on this advice, about AstraZeneca now. You know, if you can wait, because you've been pretty patient. You're waiting, right? You're waiting, okay? Are you waiting for a Pfizer or Moderna shot because you think it's better than the AstraZeneca shot?
Well, my son had Pfizer.
Yeah.
And I want Pfizer and Moderna myself.
Yeah. Right.
Just,
so you're going to
preference.
vaccine shop then? You're going to vaccine shop. You're one of the people who's going to vaccine shop.
Yeah,
okay?
for sure.
Okay, for sure. Okay. Thank you, Greg. Thank you. We'll be right back. Talkback Hour, Rob Snow Show, City News.
The location is unique. There's, as you can see, it's open, and we have large windows. You can sit down and you can look outside. And this scene is not many scenes like that in Ottawa anymore, with the high buildings. And we have the train station to the west of us. We have the train yards. To the south, we have Saint Laurent Shopping Center, not far from here. And OC Transpo, not far from here. And the train, the light train, again, is not far from here. You can find breakfast. The breakfast, it was 7 or 8 years ago, it was one of the best five restaurants in Ottawa, one of the 5 best breakfasts in Ottawa. 7 or 8 years ago, it was in the Citizen. And our club sandwich is voted by customers the best in town. And the pea soup, too, is voted the best in town. We sell, we make pizza, we make Italian food, Lebanese dishes. Many customers describe it as it has the prices of the 60s, very reasonable prices. And the food, many say the best in town, not me. Many customers say that. It was a shock. And we went from doing well to barely doing very little. We relied heavily on the takeout, and the takeout was not that much. There was some. I hear from many customers that they are willing to come and sit inside. They're not afraid of the spread, as long as we wash our hands, sanitize everything, and wear your mask and keep the distancing. Most or all our customers are okay with that. So they are against the lockdown, They are supporting us a lot. And if it wasn't for the community loyalty, we wouldn't be here today. So I have to thank them for their support so far. It's been great.
To talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
So again, you have the National Advisory Committee on Immunizations. The doctor there that you should listen to is Dr. Shelley Deeks. Play clip 3 again, Dr. Shelley Deeks.
And what we've said all along is that the mRNA vaccines are the preferred vaccine.
Most of the preferred vaccine.
And
mRNA,
yet,
Pfizer, Moderna. Okay, stop. The doctor you're supposed to listen to at Health Canada is Dr. Sapira Sharma. She said, March 5th, take whatever vaccine you can get.
Our advice to Canadians is to get whichever vaccine is available to you. It's that simple. The longer you wait to get vaccinated, the longer the time goes by that you are not protected.
And then April 14th, she said basically the same thing.
Our best advice to Canadians is always the same, but possibly more urgent now than ever, with cases of COVID-19 increasing across Canada. Get whichever vaccine is available to you. It's that simple.
But NACI says, go vaccine shopping. It's the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. I mean, if you can't believe them, who can you believe? It's craziness what's going on, if you ask me. Eric in Barhaven. Good morning, Eric.
Morning, Rob.
Hi.
Well, I've never had much faith in anything that NACI says or does.
Okay.
They're a group of 12 folks. They've got some backgrounds in microbiology. Some of them are docs, like medical doctors. I think there's a medical anthropologist tossed in there, and some clinical immunology and some allergy folks. The thing you have to remember about the NACI is they have no regulatory function whatsoever in this country.
No regulatory function. They can't approve or reject anything.
And they have no statutory relationship to the to the federal government.
Right. It's just an advisory panel.
It is. It's what they say, and $4.50 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
I like Starbucks coffee, though. If it'll get me that, okay.
So when the 4-month spread came out between first and second doses, I went to their website and looked for the report that they developed to support that decision, and there wasn't a report there. I looked back at some of their other reports on different things. Most of them are just what I would call opinion pieces because they're citing no literature. I would have expected from the 4-month delta, where they referred to real world data, that they would have provided info on where in the real world they were seeing or developing this data, and whether or not they had looked at it from a statistical standpoint, to determine whether it was an anomaly or whether it was real. So
it's not really rooted in science. It's not data driven.
No, it's not. If I was to rate one of their reports, I would give those reports a D.
Oh.
I mean, science is driven by reference to known issues, right? So when I write a paper and I make a statement, either I'm providing new data that supports that statement, or I'm referencing someone else who has developed the data so that I can make that statement. These guys don't do that.
Okay.
So the analogy I can draw here is that when you think about Health Canada and PHAC, Health Canada is the regulator. PHAC is the advisor to the federal government, to the federal health department. The NACI is sort of like Teresa Tam and Dr. New, that sort of level of functionality. But again, they have no real world relevance. They are opining on an issue, and why they're being listened to is absolutely, totally beyond my comprehension.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, what they're saying now is don't do what everyone else has been telling you to do. And I would point out what millions of Canadians have already done, and don't they feel good about it now? Don't take the first one you're offered. I mean, seriously, they're saying this now. And we're supposed to think this isn't going to have any effect on the vaccine uptake in this country? I don't know. It defies all logic that this is even happening right now. NACI said yesterday that some vaccines are preferred. It prefers Pfizer and Moderna, and you should too. That you should wait. If you can wait for an mRNA vaccine, that's what you should do. Which is really not the same as take whatever you're offered, which is what Health Canada said, right?
Our advice to Canadians is to get whichever vaccine is available to you. It's that simple.
It's that simple. Kim, Barhaven, thank you for waiting. You're on the air.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
I was actually quite alarmed when I read in the news this morning what NACI had said. I've already had the AstraZeneca vaccine last Saturday.
Right.
And it was more coercion that I went to get it because I was kind of holding out for the Pfizer and
right.
saying 55. I mean, okay, yes.
All right, it's available. Let's suck it up. Go get it, right? Yeah.
Well, I think what scared me the most was the rising cases and the variants and just, how bad it was becoming. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go get the AstraZeneca. But then when I hear, was it Shelley that quoted something that if my sister could if she went ahead and had an AstraZeneca when Pfizer was available and she died, I couldn't live with myself. That's a quote from her.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh my gosh,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was one of her quotes. We can't play that. We can't play that one because it was on CTV. But yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah,
it's just they're basically like, what are they doing to us?
I know. Right.
It just makes you topsy-turvy.
Yeah, I mean, forever we've been told, take whatever you can get, right?
Well,
don't be fussy.
Yeah.
Don't be fussy, right? And now she comes along and says, well, my sister, maybe she should be fussy. And, well, what if your sister gets COVID? What are you going to tell your sister then?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Very frustrating.
Really
it's
wrong.
very frustrating. Thank you.
This against the Canadians.
Yeah.
You have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You too. Yeah. Be right back. Halftime. Talk back hour. Rob Snow Show. City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May the 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, it's 11 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 10. And here's what's making news this hour. New numbers out today from the province on COVID-19 show 2,791 new cases. So below 3,000 for the first time in recent memory. 25 more deaths, though. 112 of these new cases are in Ottawa, 11 in Eastern Ontario's health unit, 7 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 2 in Renfrew's health area. The number of tests completed for these results, again, around 33,000. Vaccine confusion after months of messaging. One of the groups in Canada in charge of vaccine advice for all of us says Pfizer or Moderna shots are preferred over AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson. It leaves those who've had received the only one of those currently available of the two, AstraZeneca, feeling a bit hoodwinked. The PM expected to take questions on that today. A pop-up vaccination clinic designed for those only 18 and over in the neighborhood of Overbrook was full very shortly after it opened this morning. 500 doses were available today. No appointments, just walk in, but they were fully booked for the 500 shortly after opening. Another one in the same neighborhood for that area will be held on Thursday. Now, the city says in future these are not going to be promoted widely to prevent people from outside pop-up neighborhoods showing up. Proof of address will always be needed for these targeted clinics. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Will you vaccine shop? Given this advice from NACI, okay, National Advisory Committee on Immunization. You going to vaccine shop now? Have you vaccine shopped already? Thinking about vaccine shopping? Because the AstraZeneca vaccine, Johnson & Johnson vaccine, not the preferred vaccine of NACI. The preferred vaccine are the mRNA vaccines. Those are the Pfizer vaccine, Moderna vaccine. They are the mRNA vaccines as opposed to the AstraZeneca, the J&J vaccines. And NACI is now saying, if you can wait, even though we've told you, Health Canada has told you, and Prime Minister Trudeau has told you, and Doug Ford has told you, and everybody on television, all the doctors on television, they said, don't wait, take whatever you can get, take the first one on offer. Now NACI comes along, National Advisory Committee on Immunization, says, if you can wait, we'd prefer it if you took the mRNA vaccine. Those are our preferred vaccines. Because of the risk, very rare risk, blood clots, okay? Very official sounding organization, NACI. What are you going to do now? Vaccine shop. Have you already vaccine shopped? Thinking about vaccine shopping. What if you've already had the AstraZeneca vaccine? How do you feel? Do you feel like you got the dud vaccine? Would you have preferred the preferred vaccine? That'd be my preference. I would prefer the preferred vaccine. That's my preference. Would you? It's crazy. Would you prefer a different vaccine for your second dose? If you've already had one dose of AstraZeneca vaccine, would you rather have a Pfizer vaccine or a Moderna vaccine for a second dose? Apparently, they don't even know if you can do that right now. That's kind of where we are in the conversation this morning. Paul, Ottawa, you're on City News. Good morning, Paul.
I feel like a chump.
Feel like a chump.
I do. I got the AstraZeneca.
Yeah.
I've been going around telling people, get it.
Get
It's
it.
the best move to do.
Yeah.
And now I feel like a chump because, I took the shot and I feel like an idiot for telling people to go and get it. And because the health professionals, once again, are messing up the messaging and making us look like fools.
Yeah.
I'm so frustrated. Whether it's this whole way we've handled this, from borders, masks to, politicians breaking rules, vaccine acquisition, rollout, messaging, signing up. It's been a disaster, one thing after the other, and I've lost confidence in the government, and I'm so put off that. When I heard this messaging coming out, I realized it's not directly from the government. But I'm like, is this the first step to cover up one of their mistakes? And let me point to the mistake that I'm trying to point to. Is basically this. When I got my AstraZeneca shot, and you mentioned you got yours, did you get a date to get your second one?
Yes, August 12th, yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
Okay.
None of the people I chatted with got a date for this to get the second one. They just gave it. I asked
really?
for the second
Okay.
one, and they said we don't know. And
no, I have a date written on a piece of paper.
Yeah, well,
handwritten on a piece of paper. It's not. I don't even know if it's on a computer somewhere. But come back on August 12th. We'll see how it goes on August 12th, right?
We will. But I'm wondering, is this like my mother, 82? She was one of the first to get the shot in the early days.
Yes.
And she asked, when am I getting my second shot? When she got the shot, she said, they said, we will call you back.
And have they called back?
No, they haven't. Not only that,
well,
now her friends who got the shot later, her sisters and friends who were younger, they got their second date. And my mom's in complete limbo but getting her second date. And 4 months, even if that's true, that's, because the regulators, people that made it don't recommend 4 months. But even if it's true that 4 months is okay to go with, it doesn't look like my mom's going to get her shot in the 4 months, and she can't find out anything that's going on. And I'm wondering, has the government looked at this and going, well, you know what, we were going to have this headache on second shots, so let's start downplaying the value of getting the second shot and give us a reason to sort of hit the reset button. That's how suspicious I am about the government, because they're just messing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm suspicious about August 12th.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Paul.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.
Don't you think Paul wants to just like grab me by the scruff and then I'm like, Rob, wake up, man. You ain't getting your shot August 12th. Come on, get real. 750-1310 Talkback Hour, Rob Snow Show. Killaloo. Ron. Good morning, Ron.
Yes, hey, good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir.
You said it was 141 days into the vaccination program earlier in your show.
Yes, I did.
I don't think I have ever seen worse messaging by the government of Canada than this. I was okay with all of the confusion before.
Yeah.
I'm privileged. I have the Pfizer vaccine.
Right.
I just got my notification today that my second dose appointment will be, I think, the 21st of July.
Good for you. 14
to 16 weeks for my 21-day shot.
Yes.
So that's very impressive.
Yes.
So when NACI was on yesterday, I was kind of half-assed paying attention to it.
Yeah.
And, I thought, well, these guys aren't really the government, but it's confusing messaging.
But they're doctors. And it is the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, like a very authoritative sounding, right?
And then when she said, if my sister took AstraZeneca and developed a blood clot and I'd recommended it, I would feel horrible.
Right.
That one was the one that got me.
Yeah.
Do these people not talk to Health Canada?
Right.
Does Patty Hadju not phone them up and say, hold it,
You know what?
wait?
Yeah, I suppose I understand where she's coming from. If my sister walked across the street and got hit by a bus, I'd feel terrible too. Or got struck by lightning, I'd feel terrible too.
That's what I.
Right? These things happen. Rare things happen. Rare bad things happen to good people. But
people are confused, concerned, worried.
Right.
Get the second dose as fast as you can is one of the messages.
Yeah.
So we wait 3 months to 4 months for the second dose. You've had AstraZeneca. Are you going to get the same dose?
I don't know.
You're in that
what's the advice now? Should I stick with AstraZeneca because that was my first dose?
Well, they're starting.
Is it even safe to get?
Be able to mix doses.
Like for example, these are AstraZeneca and Pfizer are the mRNA vaccines, right? Where the AstraZeneca vaccine is made in a totally different way. It's made from a common cold virus from a chimpanzee. Right, totally different kind of development of vaccine. The more traditional way of developing a vaccine. Same with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Can you recall in your political reporting more messaging than this?
No. We had a scientific expert on the show. When, David? Last week, the week before. Can you mix and match doses? If I've had this one, can I mix it with this one for the second dose? And she told me, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, thanks for taking my call, Rob.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and all of this happens with third wave well underway, right? Many Canadians already frustrated with the pace of the program, the vaccination rollout. We're seeing people in other countries resume an almost normal life because they've had superior vaccination efforts in place. And a lot of people decided to take the government's advice and take whatever was offered as soon as it was offered. And then along comes this group and says, don't do that. And if you're comfortable waiting, it's probably not a bad idea to wait. These are our preferred vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna. Well, what about all the people who had the AstraZeneca shot? What are they supposed to do now? How are they supposed to feel now? What's normal reaction to news like that? I got the dud vaccine. I got the poor man's vaccine. Am I supposed to have vaccine envy now? You got a better vaccine than I did? I don't know. Should I even get a second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine? Am I rolling the dice? Can I mix and match? Can I have some Pfizer or Moderna for the second dose? Is that recommended? Is that allowed? We don't know yet. We're working on that right now. The damage that such inconsistent and confusing messaging can produce. Chris in Elmont. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning,
Straighten me out, Chris. Straighten me out. I'm a little bit confused today.
Well, no wonder.
Yeah.
Health Canada, the minister sits in cabinet. They are desperate to get as many vaccines in as many arms as possible. They've fallen completely flat on vaccine distribution, procurement. They've fallen flat on just about everything else so far, including the borders, PPS, all the rest of that stuff. And they are just desperate. So I'll take the AstraZeneca, as Trudeau did and his wife.
Right.
It's good. We don't know.
But it's not the best.
It's political.
It's not preferred. Yeah.
No, but we don't know. Another doctor who's not political, doesn't sit in cabinet, as their ministry, says, hey, no, this is not the way to go.
Right.
So, you know what, This is the most political thing that could have happened to us. They have screwed up on distribution, procurement of vaccines. They love the Chinese. This is going, and they want to call an election.
Yeah, they
take advantage of the situation. Can you believe that?
Yeah. Oh.
To take advantage of this situation so we can do everything else we want to do. No, Rob, there's something fundamentally wrong here.
Okay. Thank you.
And they've got it wrong, and they've had it wrong since the very beginning.
All right.
And they're trying to get away with it.
Thank you, Chris. All right. Brigitte, Brian, go ahead.
Hey, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Brian.
Do you have an overwhelming desire for a banana?
For a banana? What are you talking about?
That aside here. If I changed my mind as often as if I changed my socks as often as Nasty changes its mind, my wife would shoot me because she does laundry.
Okay. All right. Okay.
These people, they shouldn't exist. They're duplication, and that's what government does the best. I should know. I spent 30 years working for the Fed.
Right.
In a research lab, no less, or various research labs, ended up at Health Canada, no less. Now, I can say a lot of bad things about my employer, but their ability to analyze statistics isn't one of them. So the risks of AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson or they're what we used to call vanishingly small or almost statistically insignificant. When I hate...
Like some of the numbers that were cited yesterday, 1 in 100,000, 1 in 250,000.
Yeah, those numbers are so small they're meaningless.
Right.
I mean, they can't give you that number because there's not enough to really have valid stats on it.
Right.
It's garbage in, garbage out. Now, when they have a lot more numbers, like they do in the UK, they can give you a proper number, but not our guys. We have failed because we don't look at what other countries do, like, say, the UK. Now, there was a successful rollout, if ever there was one. Did we look at what they did? No, we didn't. We had to do it ourselves. Oh, we can't do what somebody else did. We have to reinvent the wheel. It's ludicrous. It's like redoing research because, Albert Einstein wasn't Canadian. Hello? That's just dumb.
Okay.
But the main thing, what we call the rate-limiting step, is Trudeau's inability to get vaccine into this country. That's number one. He can't get it reliably, and he can't get it fast enough. So we are suffering because of it.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Got to stop here. Final quarter. Talk Back Hour. Rob Snow Show on City News.
So the birth of absinthe was 2002, I think, 2003, and I was working at Urban Bistro, happily, where Allium is now. And then the space where Holland Cafe was, came up. It's on the corner of Spencer and Holland. And I spoke to the landlord, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of other people, but he and I just, got along super well, and he put a lot of faith in me. So Carmen Turner is his name. He gave me the lease to the place and really pretty much gave me all the equipment in the place. So I was really lucky. I've been really lucky with landlords that way, actually, both my current landlord and Carmen Turner. Because if there hadn't been Carmen Turner, there wouldn't have been Absinthe. So we were there for a few years and just sort of outgrew the place. And then now we're here. It's obviously been tough, and it's been tough for everyone. I mean, that's been the big democratic sweep of in restaurants and the hospitality and the arts that we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody's been impacted pretty much the same. From everybody that I talked to, we're down 80%. We're climbing out now. I think one of the saddest things is everybody, we went down to 2 employees from 25, and we're now at 4, and we're bringing 2 new people on this week, so we'll be at 6. So it's little steps. So it's been tough. It's I've got the most expensive clubhouse ever here, because some days you come and you don't do any business, but you're here. But I'm grateful for what I do have. I think everybody's optimistic now, not necessarily just about the vaccine, but about the vaccine, spring, being able to be outside. I think you're going to see a lot of pop-up things happen in parking lots and on sidewalks and like that, rather than being actually inside somebody's commerce. I think we'd like to take it outside. I know my staff would. My staff like the outdoors now, all of a sudden, all 4 of us. 6 soon. But we'll be doing some business in the patio in the parking lot, and we have a patio out front. And I think I hope other restaurants and stores will do the same. I hope that they take advantage of the sidewalk and doing sort of, guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, and really shaking it up a bit. You can find us at Absinthe Cafe at 1208 Wallington Street West in Hintonburg, and you can find us online at absinthecafe.ca.
1310.
The National Advisory Committee on Immunization, NACI, what is it telling people? Is it saying go vaccine shopping? Is that how you would interpret that? David, would you say go vaccine shopping? These are our preferred vaccines, and if you can wait for these vaccines, take these vaccines.
I don't know how you could interpret that any differently.
Right? Is it not contradicting what political leadership has been saying in Canada for many months now?
Yeah.
What health experts on television have been saying, what health experts on the Rob Snow Show have been saying.
It's a 180-degree change in position.
Right. Take whatever is available at the time, is what they've been saying, right? From that to, well, if you can wait, you should probably wait. And, if you're going to wait for Pfizer, wait for Moderna, right? Wait for the preferred. Do you read preferred as better? Doesn't preferred mean better? Like if you're upgraded to the preferred room at the hotel, or you get the preferred room on the airplane.
I would prefer that.
You would prefer that.
Yeah.
Right?
That sounds better to me.
Yeah, sounds better. Exactly. The preferred vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, instead of the AstraZeneca vaccine, because of the worry about rare occurrences of blood clots. I mean, what is going on? What is even going on? What is even going on when this is even going on? That's what I thought when I woke up this morning. What is going on when this is even going on? I don't have enough to worry about already. Paul in Canada. Paul in Canada, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning, Rob. Yeah, just calling in. I got my AstraZeneca vaccine probably about 5 weeks ago. I'm just turned 58. I am glad that I got it, just because I had some concerns about health and everything.
Yeah.
But like everybody else, I guess. But to be honest, at this point, like all along, I knew the Pfizer and the Moderna seemed, according to what I saw and just in the news and stuff, was the effectiveness and the side effects. They were all kind of on that side of Pfizer and Moderna being better, right? So, I mean, if they were to call me up and say, hey, we'll start you on your first dose of Pfizer, and we'll book you for your second, I'd say, sure, go ahead. Yeah. I'd be all for that.
Yeah, right, right.
But the other thing, too, is, Rob, I think this is kind of an ominous thing that's happening, too, because I called in about a week ago there. There was that modeling out of McMaster University, and they were predicting this fourth wave sort of end of the summer. And the difference between, always with these public health measures, we're trying to avoid overloading the healthcare system, to keep the peak down, right?
Right.
These waves. And the difference between having a peak that we could handle in the fourth wave was 75% uptake on that first dose versus 55%. And according to their modeling, anyway, there was this big peak. So if this actually has people hesitating and we're delayed, it could be a serious situation, actually, in terms of potentially another wave. So it's got some serious implications, eh?
It sure does. It sure does, Paul. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Good points.
Thanks,
Good points all around.
Bye.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're really going too far if you're saying maybe this advice it could do more harm than good, right? Maybe even irresponsible. Or, I don't know, maybe it confirms your suspicions. It confirms maybe what people were worried about from the get-go. You know what? I really am going to wait. I am going to wait. I'm going to wait until I can get a dose of one of the preferred vaccines. Just like, if I wait, maybe I'll get a preferred seat on the airplane. Maybe if I wait, I'll get a preferred seat. Nassie says you should wait for the preferred shot. It's really unbelievable. Maybe they're super scientists at Nassie. I'll tell you what, you're awful at communications. Terrible. Sherry in Richmond. Morning, Sherry.
Oh, good morning. How are you?
Oh, sunshine and lollipops today, Sherry. Can't you tell? All right, rainbows everywhere today, Sherry. Yeah.
Yeah. So
pot of gold everywhere. Everywhere I turn is a pot of gold.
Pot of gold, yeah.
What do you think about this advice from Nassie, Sherry?
It's to be honest, I haven't even gotten my first shot.
Right.
And that's by design. I've been waiting.
You've been waiting for the preferred one? Pfizer,
I'm not
Moderna?
even waiting. No, I'm not even waiting for a preferred one. What I'm waiting for is I personally think that this vaccine rollout is going way too fast. I think that there is so many things that have been coming up around the world, and it just feels like public health is not listening. We're seeing people, we're hearing reports everywhere. And, I mean, Canada doesn't broadcast any of this stuff. We have to find it, in other countries or, like, underground news stations because people don't talk about it.
Oh, really?
And I find we just don't have enough data.
Like what?
Well, things like we mentioned things like, okay, so there's blood clots.
Right.
But then there's also people who are having, seizures and strokes. Doctors are speaking out, even in our own country, but they're being censored. So things where people may have a stroke, or
I don't think doctors are being censored. I'm having Dr. Gerald Evans on from Queen's University. He's not censored. He's not going to be censored in anything he says.
Not censored per se, but it's things where they may report saying, okay, I have a YouTube account or Twitter, and I'm bringing my concerns to light, and it's being deleted and it's being shut down.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we've done. Sherry. There's been 1.1 billion shots of vaccine given out. 1.1 billion shots. 1.1 billion. How many people have suffered side effects?
Well, right now I'm looking at injury reports.
What's the risk? Wouldn't you expect there to be injury reports after 1.1 billion doses were given out? Wouldn't you expect some injury reports? Of course you would. Your risk of a blood clot from being on birth control is 1 in 1,000. Your risk of having a blood clot from being on one of these vaccines is 1 in 100,000.
But we're seeing more.
Where's the anti-birth control movement? Where's, down with the pill? Should we go back to that? I don't know. No, Sherry, I think, no, I've heard enough from you. Thank you. I'm going to move along right there. Susan in Nepean.
Hi. I wanted to ask a question. My son is epileptic, and I've been reading that the AstraZeneca can cause blood clots to the brain. He already has migraines and whatnot.
Your chances are 1 in 100,000, Susan, or 1 in 250,000. Your chances of having a blood clot from getting COVID, much higher. Your chances of getting a blood clot from being on an airplane, 1 in 1,000. You going to stop flying, Susan? Hey, you never going to board an airplane again, Susan? You're only going to take via rail? No, I've had enough of this. Done. Phone lines closed. The top infectious disease expert from Queen's University is on my program. Next on City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, May the 4th. Good morning, I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 10, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The latest COVID-19 infection numbers from the province show 2,791 confirmed cases today. 25 more deaths as well. 112 of the cases are in Ottawa, 11 are in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 7 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 2 in Renfrew Health Area. The number of tests completed for these results is around 33,000. A pop-up vaccination clinic designed for those 18 years of age and older in Overbrook only was full just shortly after it opened this morning. 500 doses were available today at this special clinic. No appointment, just walk in. Another one in the same neighborhood for that area only is being held on Thursday. Now, the city says in future these neighborhood pop-up clinics will not be widely promoted. Instead, Ottawa Public Health tells City News this morning a targeted approach to let people know is going to be used. So if there is a clinic in your area, you may get a flyer or an email, maybe a phone call, maybe someone knocking on your door to let you know. City News Time 11:01, and now the forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Some showers at times today with a gusty east wind, the high 15 degrees. Tonight, more rain, the low 11, and tomorrow, periods of light rain, a gusty wind out of the west-northwest, and the high about 13. For today, the high 15.
Right now in Ottawa, it's 11 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 10. The nation will hear from the Prime Minister later today, an update on the COVID-19 effort, as much of the focus will likely be on the confusion and the anger that was sparked by comments from the Federal Advisory Committee on Vaccines. More on this story from City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
There's no doubt the Prime Minister will face questions on the vaccine confusion while giving recommendations on the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. The message from the National Advisory Committee on Immunization yesterday was that the mRNA, Pfizer and Moderna shots are the preferred vaccines, and they suggested that people take the AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson doses only if they can't wait for others. This flies in the face of months of federal and provincial messaging that the best vaccine is the first one offered to you. Infectious disease expert Dr. Isaac Bogosh tells Breakfast Television he believes the NACI comments were missing some important context that's actually buried in their report.
There's a ton of COVID-19 around, and obviously you have a potentially life-saving vaccine at your disposal. At least enable people to make an informed decision so they can get it or not. Now, that's not really how the message came out.
Dr. Bogosh says the viral vector vaccines are good and safe, and people just need to be aware of the very rare risk of possible blood clots. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time 11:03. Foreign Affairs Minister Mark Garneau is in London. It's the first in-person meeting of G7 foreign ministers in more than 2 years.
The representatives of the world's wealthiest nations come to this gathering to try to develop a unified approach wherever possible on a wide range of issues such as trade and security threats. But not all are singing from the same sheet on absolutely everything. U.S.-led policy in Libya and Syria, for instance, out of step with many other Western nations who've seen what misery intervention has brought to those two countries over the past decade. Tom Rivers, ABC News, London.
City News Time 11:04. Police say a New Brunswick man roared through at Maine, crossing the international border at a speed topping 240 kilometers an hour, blowing through the U.S. border crossing at Holton, Maine on a motorcycle. The 27-year-old Jeremy Richard was finally arrested about 100 kilometers from the border in Millinocket. He's charged with eluding police, criminal speeding, driving to endanger, and reckless conduct. Police called in a Maine Forestry Services helicopter to serve as a spotter to keep an eye on the bike until police could catch up. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is how the Canadian Press is writing this story this morning about NACI, and we just had a very good hour of opinion and commentary on the National Advisory Committee on Immunization and the advice. And you just heard Cormac McSweeney's latest report from our Parliamentary Bureau. This is the Canadian Press, Dateline Ottawa. This morning, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization is coming under fire after contradicting the advice Canadians have been receiving for weeks to take the first vaccine against COVID-19 that they're offered. NACI said yesterday, that the Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna vaccines are preferred, in quotation marks, and that Canadians should weigh the risks of waiting for one of them before deciding whether to take a more immediate jab of either of the other two approved for use in Canada. The Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca vaccines have been linked to a new and extremely rare blood clotting syndrome. Because of that, Dr. Shelley Deeks, vice chair of the committee, said someone working from home in a province where there is not much disease might want to wait for a shot of the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. NACI's advice appears to contradict Health Canada's long-standing recommendation that the best vaccine is the first one available. So that's the Canadian Press this morning. Let's get to our guest, Dr. Gerald Evans. He is the chair of the Division of Infectious Diseases at Queen's University. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Rob.
Oh, thank goodness you're here, Doctor. I'm so confused, frustrated, confused, and like a lot of people, tired and frustrated, I think, with everything. But
absolutely,
what do you think of the NACI news, Doctor?
Well, I think it is unfortunately a poor choice of words, and the messaging isn't really what I think still the message is, which is the best vaccine for you to get is the first one that's offered to you. I think everybody has to put it in perspective. The rarity of the thrombosis problem that has been seen with the adenovirus vector vaccines, and the real true threat of serious illness, hospitalization, and death from COVID-19. And there's no question when you look at the balance between the benefits of vaccine versus this very small risk, that the benefit is if you get offered AstraZeneca or Johnson & Johnson, take it.
During our news break, I was thinking Health Canada has done, it says we've done in this country 11,500,000 vaccine doses. Okay, 11,500,000 vaccine doses. There have been a little more than 4,100 adverse events. And I was thinking, well, let's say you had a busy intersection of traffic here in Ottawa or down in Kingston. You had 11 million vehicle trips through a very busy intersection. You probably have 4,000 collisions, 4,000 fender benders. If you had 11.5 million trips through an intersection, I mean, we're talking small risk, right? In small.
Yeah,
risk.
absolutely. And of course, in your metaphor, your analogy you're using, most of the accidents that occurred in this section are going to be little fender benders. So those are the wow, I felt really crappy for a day or two after my vaccine and had a headache and some fever, whatever. Yeah. But only a few of them are going to be really what would be life-threatening crashes. Absolutely, it's a good analogy.
Adverse events. I mean, what would make up there haven't been 4,100 blood clots. There's been maybe 4,100 people reporting. For example, when my fiance and I got our AstraZeneca shots, I had a sore arm. I had a sore arm for a few days. She was down for the count for a good day. In bed, did not feel well. I don't know if that would be considered an adverse event. Maybe it would be. She had pretty severe side effects.
Yeah, absolutely. Any kind of event that people report after receiving something like a vaccine or a medication, we lump into an adverse event. And so those ones, as you point out, which were minor, short-lived, and didn't result in any significant morbidity, they would be counted as adverse events. But we all accept that happens when you take a medication sometimes or a vaccine.
Right. So what do you think of this idea? There are preferred vaccines and there are vaccines that aren't preferred. Because that's the language, that there are preferred. Do you think that's
I think
problematic language?
It is because it does suggest to people that it's a preference. Like, you're at a grocery store and you're looking between two different kinds of cookies, and one is preferred over the other one. Well, that's a choice that people often make, and I think that's not the right way to put it. What I would say is that within the context of what we are understanding and know about this rare side effect that's seen with adenovirus vector vaccines, is that there is a population that you can identify that really are the ones that you would suggest at every circumstance. If they could get the other vaccine, that would be great. But the vast majority of the population is not at risk for this rare side effect as far as we understand from the data and evidence that's been collected. So take the vaccine, the first one that's offered.
Okay. I want to get your take on this idea of herd immunity based on something that I read in the New York Times this week, and I'm gonna quote it here. This is from the New York Times this week. Early in the pandemic, when vaccines for the coronavirus were still just a glimmer on the horizon, the term herd immunity came to signify the end game. The point when enough Americans would be protected from the virus so we could be rid of the pathogen and reclaim our lives. Now, more than half of adults in the United States have been inoculated with at least one dose of a vaccine, but daily vaccination rates are slipping, and there is widespread consensus among scientists and public health experts that the herd immunity threshold is not attainable, at least not in the foreseeable future, and perhaps not ever. Instead, they are coming to the conclusion that rather than making a long-promised exit The virus will most likely become a manageable threat that will continue to circulate in the United States for years to come, still causing hospitalizations and deaths, but in much smaller numbers. Now, if that's happening in the United States, I can't see why it wouldn't happen here. How likely is that scenario? First of all, do you believe that scenario to be likely, and could it happen here in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, this has been an ongoing debate now for a number of months, and my colleagues who study evolutionary biology and evolutionary virology have really been looking at how this figures in. And I will say that the weight of science would support the idea that this virus is going to become what we call an endemic virus. Okay. In other words, it's never going to be eradicated from the planet like we saw with the original SARS coronavirus, but rather it's going to circulate much like the other human coronaviruses, which we have lived with for centuries, that cause the common cold, occasionally cause a more severe illness in some people, and can very uncommonly cause a death. So this is exactly the way viruses move around and evolve. Is they evolve out of a animal reservoir, they get into the human race. We're fortunate right now because the vaccines actually provide us with an exit strategy. It's just not the exit strategy that people thought, which is we're going to eradicate this virus. We're not going to eradicate it. What we're going to do is turn it into one of these relatively harmless human coronaviruses that circulate annually in the wintertime, cause some common colds, and as I said, some other things. And ultimately, we will learn to live with, as we've learned to live with all those other ones.
Endemic, meaning in the population. Yes. Always in the population.
Yeah, circulating within a population. Circulating within the population. Yep.
See, I hear that, and I remember just following, for example, HIV, and there are HIV endemic countries where HIV is endemic in that particular country, but this virus could be endemic because why, Doctor? I'm a bit confused.
Yeah,
here,
so principally, first of all, it's not unique to a country. It's going to be endemic around the globe.
Around the globe,
because we know we've discovered it all around the planet. And it's going to circulate in very low levels, and a lot of the degree of endemicity, that is, high in the winter and lower in the summer, is all going to be predicted on the basis of what we know about coronaviruses and how they end up transmitting between people. But the key with this one is that it was so, the population of the Earth was so susceptible to it. Everyone was susceptible. And it had such a more dramatic, serious, severe illness associated with death associated with it is what produced the problems. But when it becomes endemic, much of the population will be immune from vaccination, principally, and that's why vaccine is so important to move this along. To some degree, some natural infection, because we know that happens. And ultimately, that'll circulate in very low levels and not really produce the problem that we're seeing now. So that's where I think many of us feel that this is moving towards. And the only advantage we have in the 21st century is we have vaccines available against this virus, which are going to help to accelerate that evolution into what is essentially going to be a much less harmful viral pathogen than if we waited for the natural process to play out, which may have taken decades.
Okay. So polio, if I'm not mistaken, polio was declared eradicated, was it not?
So polio, of course, there's some very interesting things. You raise a great point, Rob.
Right.
So some viruses like smallpox, the only reservoir that existed was humans. When you eradicated smallpox from the planet, it couldn't live anywhere else, so it's just gone. Polio is along the same lines that the poliomyelitis viruses principally have a human host. So if you eradicate polio around the world by vaccinating people, you can actually get it down to the point where it literally doesn't exist. It's interesting because it's not exactly the same virus. It's a virus that lives in water supplies and things like that, which is why it's seen all around the planet. But coronaviruses and some of the respiratory viruses, influenza is a nice example. Influenza originally rose from ducks and aquatic birds, evolved into humans, and of course does occasionally, because of the nature that it mutates way faster than SARS-CoV-2 does, can produce some occasional pandemics and seasonal epidemics and that. But these coronaviruses really circulate in low levels, the ones that we typically have that cause a common cold, and they really don't produce a lot of harm, but they evolved out into humans literally centuries ago. And so over time, they've really become less and less a problem for us. And what we're doing with SARS-CoV-2 is we're accelerating that process because we now have a vaccine to protect people during this early phase of its emergence out into the human population.
But this idea that we may never achieve herd immunity, because I was always under the impression 75% of the population will be good enough to achieve herd immunity. It may not happen. It may not happen.
I think the concept is that we know that herd immunity exists for a number of things. Measles is a classic example. We have herd immunity to measles when heavy populations, about 90% of the population is vaccinated. But measles still circulates in low levels around the planet because it has the occasional unvaccinated person it runs into. Of course, children are born and have to be vaccinated in order to protect them.
We see some outbreaks in communities where there are low vaccination rates, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So in essence, the herd immunity is going to protect us. I think the concept, though, and the gist of the article you're referring to in the New York Times is the idea that herd immunity would eventually eradicate this virus. And that's the part where it's different. Herd immunity is really important. It's going to protect us moving forward. It's going to prevent people from dying. And it's going to create what is essentially a more harmless type viral pathogen than it is now. But it's not going to eradicate the virus. And that was the hope and the discussion that occurred last year when we were looking at, well, if we get enough vaccine into people, we'll just wipe out the virus, kind of like we did with, smallpox and or polio or whatever. But coronaviruses don't behave in that same way. And these coronaviruses actually, as we know, and I'm sure you've heard, they can infect other species of animals, dogs and cats and minks and others.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Evans. Very interesting way to look at it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. Chair of the Division of Infectious Diseases at Queen's University, Dr. Gerald Evans. An update from our local farmers from Rutters Elevators. Michael Aube is going to join us. Check in on what the farmers are up to right now, and booming prices for some of the agricultural commodities that we talked about yesterday. Just about all the agricultural commodities way up, corn, soybeans. So that must be good news for our local farmers. We'll talk about it next here on City News.
I always knew I was going to own my own business, and I've always wanted to have a store. And I sort of figured when the right concept came together at the right time, I would move forward with that plan. And so through doing some environmental initiatives in the restaurant group that I was with prior to opening this store, it just triggered my path towards being more environmentally conscientious and wanting to make more of a difference, and hopefully encouraging, inspiring other people to want to do the same, at which point the idea for All Eco was born. I have some really fun products. I have a really wide spectrum of products. So the things we look for in terms of qualifying products are sustainably made, upcycled, recycled, zero waste, all natural, no harmful chemicals to the environment or to our bodies. We have fun stuff, so really clean burning candles, lots of really natural body care and skin care. I put a real emphasis on Canadian products. I really try to support up and comers, and I always source Canada first. The refill bar is really important to me. It's really huge. I think that's been exciting as well, because I thought it was going to be a real process in convincing people that this is a better way to go. And actually it was just right away there was a built-in affinity towards doing refill, which has been great. We closed, I think, we were closed down by before the second week of March. Just didn't feel we could comfortably or confidently stay open, even though I do sell essential products, in terms of the cleaning. But we just didn't feel we could make a safe space for ourselves or our customers at that time, and especially with the information we had at the time. So we did close our doors, at which point I did not have a website, because that was I hadn't even scheduled myself to have a website at that point. So that was sort of full speed moving towards that and trying to drive the business, at the same time still get myself on the map because I was so new. so during that time, as we were building the website, we were still doing a lot of video shopping and private shopping, online shopping, like online phone, text. Any way I could do business, I was doing it. And there was really a nice show of support for my business during that time, which was really, really encouraging. And now, we are fully set up online too.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
We were talking about the big commodities boom yesterday. I mean, everybody's heard about lumber prices. If you've been to Home Depot or Lowe's, you're doing some home renovations, you know everything there is to know about what's happened to the price of lumber. But also, you have big economies that are opening, right? And you have the United States under the Biden administration planning a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure program. So you have commodities like iron ore, key ingredient used to make steel. Palladium, which is used by car makers to limit emissions. The prices on those are running, but it is also great for agricultural commodities, which is great in turn for our farmers. Grains, oilseeds, sugars, dairy products, prices up. Corn prices above $7 a bushel for the first time in 8 years. 8-year high. Okay, for corn, and same for soybeans. And when I hear that corn and soybean prices on the run, I think about our next guest, Michael Aube from Rutters Elevators in Chesterville. Good morning.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, yeah. Exciting times.
Yeah.
No doubt.
How's business?
Good. It's a larger scale of the economy is just that much greater now. The value of the goods that we sell have gone up probably 38%, and it's one of the longest drawn out rallies that I've seen in my career.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
And how long have you been in the business?
It'd be 12, 13 years, but it's a farming business. It's closer to 47, so it's closer to that 30-year in the ag business.
Right. Now, I mean, there's this whole line, if you can't be a farmer unless you're complaining, right? Because farmers are supposed to complain all the time. But soybeans at an 8-year high, corn at an 8-year high. There must be a lot of optimism locally.
Lots of optimism.
Prices.
If you want to hear a few complaints, it's those who have booked before. I wouldn't say before the rally, but at the start of the rally, and that is just good business. Good risk management. Since we haven't had since we've had the mediocre prices the last 2-3 years, especially during COVID, and the last time we talked about the trade wars, that suppressed our values in a big way. So as the rally started coming forward, probably in October, November this year, most people started booking. So I'd have to say I've got probably 80% of the inventory to be purchased already forward contracted at those prices.
Okay. So explain it to us who aren't in the industry, Michael, how it works. Okay, our local farmers, they're planting soybeans, they're planting corn.
Yeah.
Where are they selling those crops? Okay, where does it go? Where does it end up?
The corn ends up like we have a great Ontario market here, especially even in Eastern Ontario. We've got 2 large grain processing facilities.
Okay.
One for ethanol and one for ingredient. That's for sucrose and so on and so forth in the food division of the corn. And then there's also a large export market. Now our market's not necessarily with China. Like China and the U.S., that is where we've seen the big increase, which stimulates futures, and there's a lot of speculation in this. mainly because of a lot of factors that came together, and it's almost like a post-war era in our industry. Once COVID started to diminish and the economy started to strengthen, we saw speculation in that in the future. So all grain is traded on the Chicago Board of Trade, and that's what's the future portion of it.
Right. And it's in Chicago where the price is set. The global price would be set for that. Is that right?
That's right. And with our lower dollar, it's a basis factor. So everything's based on a U.S. with a lower dollar. That gives us that much more of an advantage worldwide.
Okay. So here we are. It's the 4th of May. What would typically be happening right now for our farmers getting ready for the season? What are they up to right now?
Well, we're all on standby. We thought we'd have everything in by probably the 1st of May. Everything, that nice warm weather that pulled through, but it was just a little too early for people to start planting corn and soybeans.
A little too cool and wet still.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So we missed that window. Some cereals were planted, but with the commodity prices being so high, and wheat hasn't really followed the corn and beans in the same way because of the lack of export access.
Okay.
So the farmers kind of waited. We did all kinds of cleanups and so on and so forth, and maybe even we put a lot of fertilizer up front that week. And then last week we had a small window, short-lived, but we probably have 18% of the corn in.
Okay. So would you say you're a couple of weeks behind where you'd like to be, kind of thing? Or,
and that's what's helping rallying this corn market again, is that we're staring at probably mid-May in order to try and get that 60-70%, and it's the same in the Midwest.
Okay. Okay. All right. So what you really need is for things to warm up, right?
Warm up,
dry out a little bit, maybe as well.
That's right. And get back to that. And then another factor right now is the South America Brazilian corn crop is at risk.
Okay. Wow.
So all those
global
factors.
Industry, right? Yeah, it looks like it's going to warm up a little bit next week. I think next week might be a turning point for the weather. Fingers crossed. Look, Michael, always great to get your insight on how our local farmers are doing. Thank you so much. I'm glad the prices are strong.
Thank you very much.
For our industry. Thank you again. Yeah, bye-bye. From Rutters Elevators in Chesterville, Michael Aube. The news coming up next, and then we're going to talk nursing, this story that Elizabeth Payne has in the paper. We're going to start dropping like flies. We will start dropping like flies. Terrified nurses pleading to receive second COVID-19 shots. Some of them haven't yet, if you can believe that, 4 months into a vaccination program. And the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Erin O'Toole, my guest in 15 minutes' time on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, the 4th of May. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buck, and right now in Ottawa, cloudy, 13 degrees, overcast, and 12 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Ottawa Public Health reporting 5 new deaths due to COVID-19 and 94 new cases in the day's update. This is out of 2,791 new cases across Ontario and 25 deaths across the province. Elsewhere locally, Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit reporting no new cases in the past 24 hours, but has added 1 case previously unreported. And Public Health Ontario is reporting 11 new cases in Eastern Ontario and 2 new cases in Renfrew County. Those local health units will update their numbers in the afternoon. Canadian Pharmacists Association says advice from a national panel on vaccines is unhelpful and likely to make it harder to get enough people in this country vaccinated to end the pandemic. The National Advisory Committee on Immunizations set off a firestorm of fear and anger yesterday after saying mRNA vaccines from Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna are preferred because viral vector vaccines from Oxford, AstraZeneca, and Johnson & Johnson carry a remote risk of blood clots. NACI is a panel of physicians and other vaccine experts and provided non-binding advice to the provinces that viral vector vaccines should only be used on people over the age of 30 who are at higher risk of getting COVID. Phil Emberley is a veteran pharmacist and acting director of professional affairs for the National Pharmacist Group, says he's disappointed with NACI's statements and is worried the advice will make more Canadians hesitate to get vaccinated. Quebec health officials unveiled the city's first drive-through COVID vaccination site today in a parking lot at Montreal's Trudeau International Airport. Health Minister Christian Dubé was on hand as regional health authorities demonstrated how people will be vaccinated without having to leave their cars. The operation's expected to be running by May 17th, administering 4,000 shots a day, and could serve as a blueprint for similar sites elsewhere in that province. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Elizabeth Payne is the amazing healthcare reporter for the Ottawa Citizen. Front page of the paper today. We will start dropping like flies. Terrified nurses are pleading to receive second doses of COVID-19 shots. Quote, the nurses who have asked not to be identified to protect their jobs are pleading with officials for a second dose of COVID-19 vaccine urgently, saying the high number of serious ill COVID-19 patients in hospitals is putting them at increasing risk. Just last week, a nurse in hard-hit Peel region died as a result of COVID-19. We have been doing vaccinations in Canada since the middle of December. Okay, as I said today, the first shots went into the first arms 141 days ago. Quote, we are scared. We are worried about dying. We are worried about dying, said one of the nurses. We would like to have as much protection as possible. Fears have heightened in recent weeks. Record numbers of COVID-19 patients in Ontario. Staff being asked to redeploy as many programs and services have been paused to deal with the influx. It's very, very troubling to me that all of these months into the vaccination program, the men and women, the nurses of Ontario, have not received a second dose of vaccine and are therefore fully immunized against COVID-19. From the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, the CEO, Doris Grinspun, is back on my program this morning. Doris Grinspun, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us back at this very dire moment.
How common is a story like that across Ontario, Doris?
It's very common. It's very common. I'm full today of both phone calls from nurses, direct messages on Twitter, and media interviews. This is common in Ottawa. This is common in Sarnia. I don't know if you know that in Sarnia, for example, Blue Water Health has received many, many patients from GTA because of the issues of capacity, and yet the nurses have received no second dose of the shot. These are patients that are ventilated, are on prone position, meaning it means they are on prone position because they are the sickest of the sickest. So you can just imagine what nursing is going through. Of course, they want to take care of patients, and they will, but they are putting themselves at risk. Just yesterday, I heard of a nurse in another organization, I'm not going to mention it, pregnant in an ICU now. We cannot afford to have nurses put in danger. We need to protect nurses and doctors, quite frankly, and respiratory therapists that are working in these ICUs that are getting fuller and fuller with sicker and sicker patients. We need to protect them.
So why is this happening? Is it the interval of the doses, the 4-month interval between doses, Doris Grinspun? Could that have something to do with it?
Chief Medical Officer of Health, first of all, the local Chief Medical Officer of Health, why they don't put these healthcare providers that are in the first line of duty in ICUs with absolutely sick patients, not to vaccinate them first. With all due respect, I mean, that's the person that makes the decisions and the ministry. I actually sent directly to the minister yesterday a WhatsApp about this. It needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved now.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me when I think about it. Who is more essential? Who could possibly be more essential?
Nobody,
right? Nobody.
The ICUs are full of patients now. We are moving patients from GTA to, as I said, places like Sarnia, for example. And these patients are absolutely very sick, as I explained to you, by the position that they need to be posed, which is called prone, which means, looking down so that you have more lung expansion. So they're the sickest of the sick, and yet the nurses are without the second shot of the vaccine. This is not even in developing countries, with all due respect. I mean, we are in Canada. So if the Prime Minister needs to send the army to put the shots on the nurses and the docs and their teeth, let it be. But this Premier and his entire team is losing the journey here.
Right, but you just said it was on the local medical officer.
You close this province enough to protect vulnerable populations, essential, non-essential places continue to be open. And second, didn't give the sick times. And now it's not vaccinating nurses with a second shot. And by the way, I also hear the same with docs and RTs in these units.
Docs and who?
And respiratory therapists.
Oh, respiratory therapists, yes.
Like all of them, it seems. So I hear from nurses, but I have asked my colleagues, what about docs? And it appears the same situation.
But you said it's up to local medical officers of health.
Yeah, but they
could speed this up if they wanted to. That's what you said, Doris.
Yes.
Right? But you're putting a lot of the blame on Premier Ford, though.
Guided also, there is a person called David Williams, which is, you may have forgotten, but he also is the Chief Medical Officer of Health of Ontario.
Sure. So what should they be doing then?
They should put absolutely the nurses and the docs and their teeth in these ICUs that are replete of COVID patients, very, very sick. They should put them in the first line for the second dose. Otherwise, they're endangering them.
I mean, it seems to me that it's all patient-facing healthcare workers should have long ago received their second dose of vaccine. They should have received it 3 weeks apart, or 4 weeks apart, not 16 weeks apart.
Yeah. They don't even have a date. They don't even have a date for the second dose. Just picture that.
Some of them don't have a date for a second dose.
Yeah.
Well, my goodness, I've had a date for a second dose. I've had one dose of vaccine. Yeah, I'm supposed to get a second one August 12th.
Here you go. I don't.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Boy, do you get the sense like it's the luck of the draw sometimes?
I get the sense that there is a complete disorganized system as it relates to vaccination. First the hotspots or so-called hotspots pay the price. But now also in addition to that, it seems that healthcare providers that are in the first line of duty, as I said, with very, very ill patients with COVID positive, they are there because they're COVID positive, are not getting the second shot.
Okay. Again, I'm shocked. But the story in the Citizen this morning, you're saying not isolated. It's not isolated to Ottawa.
Not isolated. Okay. Not isolated. Sarnia, Sarnia is exactly the same.
Thank you, Doris Grinspun. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
And I actually related to Sarnia. I called the minister also.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to hear from you again, Doris Grinspun, CEO. Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, 141 days into the vaccination program. Remember the photo up at the Ottawa hospital, 141 days later. Still some of them waiting for a second dose. It's crazy. 11:42. Be right back. Erin O'Toole to close out the Rob Snow Show today, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. This is City News.
It's a space that needs to be lived in. It's a space that people, have to have an experience of more than just art on the walls. I think, yes, the art on the walls is fun, and it's fun to walk around and see all the beautiful things, and the way Dominic and Edith have curated the gallery is certainly something worth seeing. But coming by and asking questions, again, to Dominic's point of view is, interrupt him, ask questions. I'm here on most of the days too. We have Luce that comes in, Nancy that comes in. So yeah, we have quite a few opportunities for people to come in and see the process, and of course ask a few questions. It's a great space. Basically, the one event that we did do, is the jazz shows, the jazz and blues shows. And I think the weird thing to let you know is that the acoustics in here are really amazing. I think that was the first thing that blew me away when we started doing shows, or when I was helping out with the shows. The other part of the business too is we do rent it out for special occasions too. So a few weddings, birthday parties, product launches, that kind of thing. So they're also a lot of fun. We do have one artist that's from the States, but of the 30 odd artists, the rest are from either Quebec, Ontario, and one beautiful woman from BC. It's definitely part of the philosophy to maintain and canvas and show the beauty that we have in our backyard. You have the very, very strong personalities in Edith and Dominic, of course. It's wonderful to see how that actually balances out in the rest of the gallery. Without necessarily being, an objective, we basically have half female artists and half male artists in this gallery. But I can't say it's anything more than choosing the best people, and that's just the way it is. And I love that. I think it's great. You go through and you're like, wow, it's all pretty cool. And yep, it's half are women and half are men. It's cool. Like everyone else, we didn't know what to think, right? It's overwhelming at first. You just know that things are closed. And now you're trying to figure out what you do during that downtime, which I think everyone did. And I think in March, the first close, the first shutdown, it was a lot of actually recuperating and resting and not worrying too much on the spot. It's running a gallery is a bit like running a marathon with sprints. So there comes a time where, it's actually nice to just take a break. And then you wake up and realize that, okay, now it's time to wake up and deal with this new reality. From my perspective anyways, I think a gallery can be overwhelming, and I like to make it fun. So you're going to come in, I'll ask you questions, I might even joke around with you. The most people come here, they're not really going to buy art, but they could have a fun time and talk about it, right? And one of the things the gallery does offer is for local purchases, we'll be happy to drive it to your house and hang it for you.
To learn more about this month's
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Much to discuss with our next guest. He is the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, Erin O'Toole. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you. You have had a dose of vaccine, right?
Yes.
AstraZeneca, right?
Yeah, a week and a half ago, my wife, Rebecca, and I got our AstraZeneca, our first dose.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
I feel great. As I said to people, the next day I went for my big run on Sunday. I didn't have any impact after it. We're an unusual case as well, though, Rob. You may recall last September we had COVID. So the first dose, there obviously was probably some sort of level of antibody in our system. And we've been trying to say, hey, it's important for us to get vaccines into arms to turn the corner on this crisis. There's so much confusion, generally sown by a government that's 2 or 3 steps behind where they need to be. And I wish we saw pictures like we see in the UK and the US with stadiums and restaurants and other things filling up. We know that's not the case here. So we're going to push for more, and hopefully we can turn the corner.
When it comes to the messaging, Mr. O'Toole, are there too many cooks? We've had NACI saying one thing, we have Health Canada saying another thing, we have the government saying something, and the message is confusing here when it comes to what you should do. And should you wait to get a preferred vaccine, or should you get the first vaccine you can get? What do you think about that?
The main cook in the kitchen, Minister Haiju and the Prime Minister, have confused people from day one in this crisis. Remember back when they said closing the borders not important, mask use isn't important, there's no risk to human-to-human transmission. They've actually created so much confusion, and now that's happening over the vaccines, and it's really so unnecessary. The reason why there's these questions, Rob, is because we don't have sufficient supply. If we had the quantities in January and February to avoid the worst parts of a third wave, people would be getting vaccinated. They'd be getting any one of the approved by Health Canada. If these vaccines are approved, they're safe and effective for use, and we need to get them into arms. So all the changing dosing levels, all these decisions being made by the government and sometimes through NACI are the result of a shortage of supply, which is Trudeau's main failure in this pandemic.
Okay. I want to turn now to the serious sexual harassment allegations that have rocked the highest ranks of the Canadian Armed Forces. Your party is calling on the Prime Minister to fire his top advisor, the Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Trudeau, Katie Telford.
Yes.
Because you say she was aware of sexual misconduct allegations against General Vance, but did not tell the Prime Minister. Why do you want her resignation?
Well, the Prime Minister has to get honest with Canadians here. I have some doubt with respect to his story, Rob. I would find it shocking if in the midst of Operation Honor, an exercise to root out a culture that perpetuated an environment of harassment and sexual misconduct in the forces, they charged General Vance to lead that effort. Would they have not told the Prime Minister when a direct allegation from a victim came in through the Ombudsman? I find it hard to believe he's so disconnected from his job. But he's telling us that's the case, and we know from documents, and we know from Elder Marquez that Katie Telford knew. So does he think it's acceptable for his Chief of Staff to keep that critical fact from him, so much so that he praised General Vance for his work on Operation Honor, gave him a bonus, and extended his contract, Rob? So you can't have it both ways. Either the Prime Minister knew and moved things along and hoped the complaint would go away, or he's satisfied that Ms. Telford keeps him in the dark, which is pretty shameful leadership.
As you say, the minister knew, the Minister of National Defense knew something was amiss because he was told so by the Ombudsman. This is not in doubt. This has come out in testimony before committee. Elder Marquez, a senior advisor, one of the closest advisors to the Prime Minister, says he told Katie Telford, the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister. The former clerk of the Privy Council knew something was amiss, Mr. Wernick. So it seems all of these people knew, but the Prime Minister was somehow in the dark, which I'm not sure is really a good look for the Prime Minister.
You're right. It's almost
all of these other people knew, but he didn't know. So.
Yeah, it's almost beyond belief, Rob, that all these, including their executive assistants, Ms. Telford's assistant knew. So everyone literally in the Prime Minister's orbit knew except for him. And no one raised it when they said, hey, should we give General Vance a performance bonus and extend his contract? Like, if he's satisfied with his Chief of Staff hiding things from him and conducting what we believe amounts to a cover-up. That's really what we're driving. It's less about Ms. Telford, and it's more about Mr. Trudeau's shocking disregard for a sexual harassment complaint and a complete abdication of his leadership as the Prime Minister of Canada. I think Canadians expect more, but with Mr. Trudeau, we get photographs, we get announcements, we never get follow-ups, we never get the vaccines, we never get things done on time, and Canadians deserve better.
I want to get your take on Bill C-10. The Trudeau government now says it's kind of seen the light, I guess, when maybe it's really lost NDP support. I'm not sure which it is. But it now says it's going to bring forward an amendment and make it crystal clear, quote, crystal clear, that content individuals upload to social media sites, YouTube, Instagram, whatever, TikTok, whatever the case, they won't be regulated by the government. This is according to the Heritage Minister, Mr. Guilbeault. What do you think about that? This climb down.
Well, they say they've seen the light on C-10. Rob, I think it's more like they got caught. At the end of the legislative process, they quietly removed an exemption for social media platforms. And people should say, why would they do that when it was put in there to show that they weren't going to try and regulate that content Canadians are putting on social media? Clearly they want to. And Canadians deserve an explanation, and we deserve a huge defense of that liberty for Canadians. And so the Conservatives, since this happened, have been raising the alarm bell. It's great to see that a lot of Canadians see what the Liberals were trying to do in the midst of a pandemic when people weren't paying attention. But I think the C-10 bill is flawed, and people should have a lot of concern about the government trying to regulate free speech and expression on social media platforms.
Let's talk about Line 5. The Ontario Minister of Energy has said about 5,000 jobs in Ontario are at risk, primarily in the Sarnia area, which is kind of petrochemical alley for Ontario. This is a critical piece of energy infrastructure. The governor of Michigan has ordered this pipeline to be closed by the middle of next week, Wednesday of next week. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Seamus O'Regan, the Natural Resources Minister, says he's watching it like a hawk and that its closure is non-negotiable. What do you think of the government's handling of the Line 5 situation?
Well, they haven't been handling it at all, Rob. We've been raising it for several months, and we saw with Keystone XL, the U.S. administration canceled that pipeline almost symbolically against Canadian interests on the first day of the new administration. We've wanted a much stronger defense and support for Line 5, which is critical for Ontario, Quebec's economy. There's the direct jobs you talked about, thousands, Rob. People that use propane and that are rural businesses, rural homes, they need it. The aircraft fuel at Pearson all comes from that source. So it is critical for our economy, and it's an example of a government that is timid to stand up against these almost ridiculous positions from the left that we can't use oil and gas, or we've got to shut down pipelines and bridges and highways. It's this sort of shut down Canada mentality that Mr. Trudeau a year ago took weeks before he started speaking up for working people in our economy. So we're going to continue to push on Line 5, and people should wake up to the fact that the Trudeau government has really soured our relations with the United States now under 3 presidents, and it'll be a priority for me to get back that special trade and security relationship that Canada's traditionally had with the Americans.
Okay. I want to talk about environmental policy. I want to talk about a carbon tax. For a long, long time, the Conservative Party of Canada has been opposed to a carbon tax. A tax on everything. Mr. Harper called it a money-sucking socialist scheme. It's something that governments want to do because they're afraid to raise sales taxes, like the GST. You yourself said you were going to repeal Mr. Trudeau's carbon tax. Now you're going to have your own carbon tax beginning at $20 a ton and maxing out at $50 a ton. Mr. Trudeau said his carbon tax wouldn't go higher than $50 a ton. Now we know it's going to go up to $170 a ton. You're going to have an entire segment of your party that has been opposed in election after election to a carbon tax. now trying to win an election pitching Canadians on a carbon tax. Why is the Conservative Party, led by you, now promoting a carbon tax, Mr. O'Toole?
Well, we're not promoting a carbon tax, Rob, because a carbon tax would send the tax revenue to Ottawa, which Ottawa would then redistribute, raise billions and billions going, as you said, as he triples it to 170 and goes further. Our approach, I'll be the first to say, the change we've made, Rob, is we are putting a price for the consumer on carbon. But I'm
going to have to pay it. I'm going to have to pay it, which makes it a tax, and send it to Ottawa, which makes it a tax. Somebody in Ottawa is going to take my money. That makes it a tax. Come on, Mr. O'Toole.
When you pay the 10 cents on your beer bottle and you take them back, Rob, and you get that back, did you pay that tax to Ottawa, or was that an environmental levy?
Well, that would be considered a deposit. Is that what you're calling this? It's a carbon deposit? Is that what it is?
No, we're calling it a price on carbon. People can give me a hard time on that. I don't mind. But when you actually see transparently what that price is, and then it stays in your low carbon savings account, you then are in charge. It is not being sent to Ottawa where it's going to be redistributed, sprinkled around according to Mr. Trudeau's green dreams. You are in charge. The only requirement is in the future it has to be applied against a purchase that will help lower your footprint. What that has allowed us to do is to come up with a climate change plan that equals Mr. Trudeau's original pledge on emission reductions, our Paris targets, without the job and economic disruption, his increasing carbon.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.